Yo, we live? We're live. Hello, chat. Welcome. Welcome to the silence. It's complete silence. We usually don't start streams in complete silence, but I'm waiting to open the game. Welcome. Hello. Hello. What is up, everyone? Hello. Yo, what's up? Yo. Welcome. Welcome. Hope you guys are hyped up for this because I certainly am. I am so excited for this one. Welcome, guys. Hello, everyone. Hello. So, apparently, the second that I open the game, it's gonna go right into the actual story without giving me a chance to press start or anything along those lines. So, I don't have it open yet. So, I'm just waiting for, for us to start the stream and then I'm gonna open it. But yeah, welcome, guys. Welcome. I don't know what the audio is gonna be like because, as I said, I think it's just gonna open up straight into the story. So I think it's not even gonna give me an option to go into settings and stuff before it. So we'll see. Hype. Okay, glad to see that everyone's hyped. Because I'm so excited for it. As you guys know, I know nothing about it apart from the fact that Aoko and Alice are characters in it. Apart from that, I know basically nothing about the story or anything along those lines. So I'm excited for it. I am very much excited to see what this holds in store for us. I did see some discussions about like display capture versus application capture. I'm gonna do display capture for now, and we'll see how it's gonna go. But as I said, I don't know what the audio is gonna be like. So prepare to have your ears blown out if the audio ends up being too loud at the beginning. We're gonna adjust and see how it goes as we go. So first type moon visual novel other than FGO. Correct. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. As far as I know, it's also the first thing that I think it's like the first thing that the first novel or whatever that Natsu wrote and then it ended up being adapted into a visual novel later down the line. So yeah, okay, let's wait. Let me also first, before I do that, let me make sure that the audio is also going to capture it. 96, hell yeah. Updating Steam, great. Give me a second. Logging in. Opening. Alt enter. We can see it. I can't hear it. You guys can't hear it. Oh god, prepare to get your ears blown out. I can't hear anything. I cannot hear anything. Is my camera going to... Well... Yo, what's up, guys? What's up, Ignacio? I think this is, also play later. Okay. I'm just making sure everything works. We are in it. We are in it. Also, wait, let me change my camera position because I'm seeing it might be a problem. I'm going to swap my chat and camera position a bit. Move stuff to the right bottom. I feel like that's where the text is going to end up being, though. I feel like it's better if I put it up here. Text is usually top middle. Okay. Wait, we're just gonna make sure that everything's gonna work. Bottom right, you said? Bottom left. Right, not left, okay. Okay, we're gonna be like this. We are gonna be like this. You guys should see yourself, you guys should see me. Perfect. Let's go. It was a winter's day 8 years ago. That solemn morning when she understood the value of life for the very first time. I don't want to use Discord. Oh, here we go. Her home was nestled on the side of a mountain. Thank you. Okay. Around it was nothing but inhospitable wilderness. She had no neighbors or childhood friends to speak of. Things like traveling to school or playing outside were more trouble than they ought to be. Indeed, with its pure water and bright stars, it was a place rich with memories both frustrating and Yep. That was only during summer though. Winters in those mountains were extremely frigid, each morning one more severe than the last. Her father would drive her to the train station, after waiting 10 minutes for the engine to warm up and the ice over windows to clear. Okay. Okay. Her father would savor his morning coffee, leaving her to venture outside and rev the engine. Out the front door she would go, traversing the garden with icy breaths, until she reached that old sedan. As always, she inserted the key, then started the ignition, and the engine rumbled to life. And just as she proudly finished that humble task she'd done so many times before. That's an animal. A shrill scream pierced the air. She knew, even though it wasn't human, that the feeble sound was a cry of agony. A few moments passed. Her father came out and opened the hood of the car. Oh god! Creaking fan belts. A monstrous-looking engine. And something that didn't belong. There was a cat, a mother by the looks of it, and her 2 kittens. The 3 cats had been huddling for warmth in the engine's compartment. The mother cat was missing its head. Oh. One of the kittens had been mangled beyond recognition by the engine belts, and surely died instantly. The other kitten, its face half covered in blood, panted faintly. It desperately clung to its mother, or rather, the chunk of meat that had been its mother, with the last bit of life it could muster. Her father lamented their plight. The previous night had been especially cold. After he had returned home yesterday, the cats must have snuck under the hood, drawn by the warmth of the engine. They had slept next to the engine and awoken to a storm of spinning belts. Cars in the 80s were not sealed particularly well, so this was not unheard of. 80s, okay. Her father's voice seemed distant. She could only make out a small tuft of the kitten's grey fur. The rest of it was caked in the blood of its mother and brother. I can see its skull. The fragile life of a speckled kitten. Trembling and possibly blind, it continued to nuzzle against its dead mother's chest. She took the kitten into her arms and ran deep into the mountains, to her grandfather's house. It was because she was overcome with regret. Or was it the shock of grief? Years later, she still wasn't sure. Fighting back the welling tears, she burst into her grandfather's workshop. Her grandfather was a magician who could do anything. She had never seen magic. She knew that magic was a fantasy straight out of fairy tales, but so was her grandfather. She had to find him. She was the only one who could help. The cave-dwelling magician said indifferently. This kitten needs our help, she pleaded. Whether it was a simple task or a Herculean labor, her grandfather would not say. He simply granted the girl's childish wish, like a machine. Whoa. The girl said. Before she knew it, however, she was holding a tiny corpse in her hands. Its fur was squalled. The wound of life had left its body, and the tears she had fought so hard to hold back poured from her eyes. Regret spread to her chest like an endless grey sky.
トローだったな。結局元に戻すとは。
Her mind struggled to come to grips with what had just occurred. The last 10 minutes were a total blank. Who she met, what she had known, it was all as if it never happened. The only thing she was sure of was that life, once extinguished, can never return.
そこに誰かいるの?
That day, it was her mistake that gave birth to me. Oh shit! Indeed. Whatever occurred that day, it was a day of nostalgia and longing. This is the fairy tale of 8 years ago. The day they first met, that no magic can ever bring back. That's a banger opening scene. That's a crazy opening scene. Wow. Arrogant, greedy, and able only to destroy. It must be a wolf. I must be a wolf. I don't have regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride has left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of Little Red Riding Hood. Strange One. Oh, you can't see the title, but it says Strange One. When she says Little Red Riding Hood, it reminds me of the thing with Ayaka. Sajo Ayaka. It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an ashen, watercolor grey. The thermometer displayed 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Bro. English. A rather unforgiving temperature for November. Her stomach woke her up with a growl, pathetically reminding her that she had completely missed breakfast. You can right-click to menu if you need to change settings. Okay, I don't care about that. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, that's all good. But lazy morning like today's were, for her, a blessing. Also, what are we thinking of the volume? Is it fine? For me, it's fine, but what about you guys? It was already well past 8 in the morning. On any ordinary weekday, tiredness would be unavoidable, but today, classes were cancelled in commemoration of the school's anniversary. Gratefully, she had every intention of taking it easy for the first time in ages. I might be a bit low compared to the game. Okay. Could be a bit louder. With music, your voice might drown out. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna change it. I'm just gonna change it here. Okay. I mean, it's really silent in general this moment here. Outside the window was a gloomy grey, and it reminded her more of evening than morning. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination, but having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. All she cared about was more sleep. As long as she could spend her morning in bed, what was happening outside was of no concern to her. She shut her curtains. Then close her eyes and try to let sleep reclaim her.
せめてあと2時間ぐらいは凡庸な夢を見ていられますように。
Blissful slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, I love the way that it's written, by the way. I like the style. Her simple request would be mercilessly refused. A faint but shrill sound lingered in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Much to her chagrin, her eyes popped open out of habit.
こんな日に限って。
The telephone was situated in the foyer on the first floor. Answering it meant walking down a 30-foot corridor and going down a flight of stairs. Oh, that would wake you up. In her sleep-deprived state, that distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. Chagrin, sure. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the caller would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge.
アリス出ないの？
Oh, name drop. She thought her housemate would get it, but she soon had to abandon all hope. The realization shocked that her housemate did not have the day off from school and was likely in class at her prestigious little Hilltop Academy. The call proved incredibly persistent. That persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder.
もうせっかくの安眠を。
She was left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave the room. No. Ooh. Okay, interesting.
うわ、寒。
She rubbed her hands together to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate, to say the least, which meant that winter was the very worst of uninvited guests. Oh, I see. Never more so than on a dreary morning as this, when one didn't need to use a thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat in the mountains and was surrounded by dense forest. Winter always arrived here first, before moving on to nearby towns. The robotic ring of the telephone reverberated throughout the long hallway. The mansion's furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it made the place feel unlived. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. Coupled with the dreary morning, it could have passed for a haunted house.
ま、幽霊屋敷そのものだけど、だいたい2人で住むには広すぎるのよ、この家は。
She counted more than 30 rings since it first began. Persistent, huh? The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out onto a gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring in the act as soon as possible, though she had a feeling that her happy morning might come to a close the moment she caught it. It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance of this tale. All good, man. For whether it be objectively true or merely supposition, it's always from gloomy and unassuming beginnings that extraordinary events are set into motion. OP. Takashi Takeuchi Kinokonasu. If you're watching a VOD of this on YouTube, by the way, well, you might not even hear me, depending on what YouTube's gonna decide. I don't know how we're gonna be with copyright in this one. It's up to whoever's the copyright holder. Probably Sony, yeah. The OST that we had yesterday, the block the stream, was from Sony. It was Sony who ended up blocking it. Yo, what's up, guys? The great one. We are on Mahoyo indeed. Here we go. Witch on the Holy Night. Man, I miss the non-live service VNs. It's been a while since I played a non-live service VN. Like a non-gacha VN. I forgot how good they can be. The rain had subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Oh. The sunlight seemed to be playing a peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be cleared up by early afternoon.
と言っても、私には関係のない話だけど。
The weather reflected her luck. On top of being forced out of the house at such an early hour, she had to suffer through a winter rain. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrance and headed out inside. Oh, wait, feeling she had only grew. Okay. You can just press space. I'm used to pressing with my mouse because of FGO. She didn't encounter any other students along the way. Nor did she see anyone taking part in club activities either. The reception desk to the faculty room simply read, "Faculty closed." The school had given all of its students a day off. Except those explicitly summoned, like her. A fact that irked her more and more as the minutes passed. She opened the door to the faculty room and headed towards the desk she had visited a number of times before. This is also a very unique way to present a visual novel, because usually it is in the similar style as what FGO has it, right? Where there's a character and then there's a text at the bottom. This is a cool way to show it. Usually this kind of thing is just used as like extra exposition that's at the start of a chapter or something. Yeah. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim-framed glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. The mild-mannered image this mid-20s man presented clashed with a cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet.
Yamashiro sensei.
Yamashiro. She closed the door with a bang. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yamashiro lifted his head.
Yeah, Ohayo, Aozaki-kun.
Aozaki.
要件は聞いているかな?
Confirmation that this is Aoko, okay. I guess this means you got the call.
はい。1時間前に自宅で、事前に何の相談もなく。
Having graduated from this high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the students. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. He always had something interesting to talk about and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. She was of the opinion that teachers should come across as more austere, sure. Like an iron fist that could inspire both love and hate in equal measure, not a body to joke and power around with. He was the exact opposite of how she felt a teacher should be. It's only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she'd ever been wired to make friendly small talk.
今日もご機嫌斜めみたいだね、君は。
それは先生の気のせいです。今日だけ特別という話ではありませんから。
The matter-of-fact answer perfectly matched the displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood from having to get up early and the tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively adversarial.
そうならいいんだけどね。彼にはそう辛く当たらないでくれよ。僕らじゃ正直どう扱っていいかわからないところもあるし。
先生、その件ですけど、私、まだ詳しい話を聞かされていないのですが。
As Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes, he finally understood the reason behind her tone and slowly put out his cigarette.
電話じゃあなんて聞いたの？
転入生の紹介をするとだけです。理由も脈絡もない説明でした。
One of Mr. Yamashiro's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. Man, some of the words that they're using here, okay. He could see that she was angry, not because she had been called to school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was here. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically.
先生、これが笑い話なら、そろそろ帰っていいでしょうか。
いや、ごめん、謝るよ。冗談じゃなくて真面目な話なんだ。ちょっと君の手を借りたくてね。
本当に転入生の問題で？
訳ありというか難しいというか。
OK。
彼、宗十郎くんというんだけど、
ちょ
っといろいろとずれていてね。僕らが案内してあげるより同世代の君の方が適任だと思ったんだ。
She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent of them to be pushing teaching duties on her, but she did wonder how exactly this trans student was peculiar. Maybe he meant the student had behavioral problems or was difficult somehow. But peculiar. She didn't have the slightest idea what that meant.
ずれてるなんて、そう使わない表現だけど。
She had her doubts, but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. The fact remained that this conversation was all the peculiar as she could handle, and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home.
一つ質問があります。
何？学年は君と同じ2年生だよ。性格は落ち着きがあって人の話をよく聞くタイプ。裏を返せば覇気がないとも取れるけど、それならそれで付き合いやすいだろ。青崎くんとはクラスは違うけど、きっと仲良くな。
Oh, we're not in the same class?
そういったことは本人から直接聞きますし、測ります。そうではなく、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Though her tone was so stern, it was clear that she was willing to cooperate. She decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task at hand. Forcing herself to act empathetic in spite of her self-absorbed nature was something she was used to. Paradoxically, this force of will was also the reason teachers put so much faith in her. To a point. At times, that strength shattered expectations, and on those occasions, they were left with no choice but to treat it like a natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro had come to deal with her as over the past year.
もう一度だけ聞きます、山城先生。それでなぜ私なんでしょうか。
Pressured by a question without a clear yes or no answer, he answered.
それはね、別に青崎くんが先生方に敬遠されているのと同じぐらい信頼されていて、学校のためなら教師も生徒も一緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長だからじゃないよ。
Oh, she's the student council president?
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由はないと思いますけど。
Her eyes had nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, admiring the miraculous balance of qualities.
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやってるさ。この人選に関しちゃ教師や生徒会長といった役職も関係ないよ。なんていうか、こんな頼みを損得抜きで聞いてくれるのは君だけだと思ってね。適任ですからと強く推薦したわけ。
In other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
うわ、怖っ。もう睨まない睨まない。言ったろ、僕にはともかく彼には笑顔でって。とまあ納得してくれたならすぐに移動しよう。もうずいぶん待たせてしまっているからね。それと雨の中ご苦労様。帰りはもちろん車で送るよ。
Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. Oh, good thanks, she replied, before turning and walking out of the faculty room. He had been waiting for about an hour. Damn. While he did, the rain shower lightened into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of the raindrops. The room was filled with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best behaved student might have grown dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now, but the boy stuck to his spot like a scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November, and the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. The heater hadn't been turned on. Either he'd missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. He breathed lightly on his freezing fingers as he aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. This dreary place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him it was drab and overly spacious. It was a lifeless place that reminded him of an arid cave. Stuck in this cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of the rain. The rain hardly resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it, barely. Its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain. So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. That trivial detail perked him up a little. He liked how the town looked soaked in rain. Naturally, he preferred sunny weather, but he liked rain in its own way. The fog from the rain had soaked up the scent of the soul, and it reminded him of home. Okay, so he's a mountain boy. A country boy. It was at times like these that he was able to numb the anxiety the city gave him. But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He'd already been here 2 weeks, and thoughts of his hometown still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that he was being unfair to his new life, he composed himself and continued to wait patiently. As if having a passion for distractions, his attention returned to the sound of the rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem to be particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold and the hour alone with calm, deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. Shut up, Robert. Shut up, Dimes's. A strong point of his or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was suddenly helping him out in this moment. She, on the other hand, was livid. The profile of the Chancellor student had been explained to her on the way to the meeting room. She was told he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without any electricity. That meant more than half of civilized society would have been an utter mystery to him.
なんて絶望的な断絶。戦後どころか戦前の話じゃない。ロビンソンにも程がある。
Post-war Japan. Okay. She had every right to be angry. She did? His village had apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villagers in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable in modern Japan. Okay. All the expressways and Japan Rail, the old national railways, now span the country like arteries. It wasn't entirely impossible for mountain villages like his to exist. Interesting. But she couldn't imagine how someone born to such circumstances would think or live. No internet?
電気がないって、村に行き渡っていないだけで公衆電話ぐらいはあったんですよね。
なかったそうだよ。こっちに暮らすようになってまず驚いたのが電話だそうだし、電話って便利ですねなんて真顔で言われてね。
Yeah, it's the 80s, exactly.
そういえばそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ。
It's not too hard to imagine. She shot a sidelong glare his way as he left. It seemed that the naivety of the country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro a bit.
駐在もいないってことか。うちも実家は山奥ですから、電気が通っていないのはありえないとは言いませんけど。
Yeah, exactly. It's not inconceivable.
そいつ、学校も知らないんですか？
うん。どんなものかは知っていたそうだけど、実際来るのは今日が初めてらしい。それで緊張していたのかな。あまり会話も弾まなかった。
Like a clan than just a village. Interesting.
ああいうのも野生児っていうのかな。狼に育てられた狼少年みたいな。あ、いや、探検隊の話だね。怖いな、青崎くん。冗談だって。そう睨まないでくれ。大丈夫。話してみた感じ、おとなしい子だったから。なんていうか、言葉の通じない小動物みたいな感じ。
山城先生、その例え、気休めになってませんか？
As she gave him her blunt reply, she tried to simulate in her mind what a life without electricity would be like, but the thought of it took her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world she had never known. She couldn't understand why the teachers had given up. She, too, wanted to give up and return to her warm bed, but her good-for-nothing pride she was up to the task, but she also believed she could do it. It wasn't that easy to go back on her word, no matter how bad things looked after the fact. She walked along the hallway, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや、青崎くん、君を信頼してる僕だけど、念のため確認しておくよ。
I have a feeling that's
な
not
んていう
possible.
か、優しくね。
Smile?
できれば
You're
笑顔
expecting
とか
way too
作れないか
much.
な。
The most you'll get is a hi.
作り笑いは苦手です。一応努力しているつもりですが。
ああ、 そうなんだ。それはよかった。
Is it?
いやー、ほんとよかった。青崎くんにも苦手なものってあったんだね。
Mr. Yamashiro's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hand on the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated.
分かってるわよ、愛想が悪いってのは。でも笑顔なんて意識して作るものじゃないんだし。だいたいそういうインスタントな人付き合いなら飛び丸の方が向いてるって。
Oh, I'm waiting for the scene where she actually will eventually smile. I'm sure it's gonna be a great scene at some point. She sighed about her social shortcomings. And then it occurred to her that being called into school on a day off while sleep deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyway. She also thought the person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do the teacher's work for them. At the very least, they could have used their brains and organized all this on a normal school day. Another complaint she wanted to voice later.
いや、というか敵。なんであろうと敵。
Oh.
悪いけど、情状酌量以前に敵。間が悪いのはお互い様っていうか、ほんと、なんでよりにもよってこんな忙しい時に。
The tsundere vibes are so strong. Her pounding headache from a lack of sleep had boosted her aggression by 10%. No matter how harmless the guy on the other side of the door may be, anyone who disturbed their sleep was the enemy. And just as she was reaching peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door. Opened the door to the meeting room. Whoa. The room slowly slid into view. Okay. She didn't care for formalities. Just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room. She found herself face to face with a most unusual opponent. Before we go on, let's see from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little. It's just Tsun without the data? Well, for now, they're setting up the Tsun. You need to set up the Tsun before you get the data. The data comes later. You don't have to do anything. For some, these words are a priceless luxury. For others, they are unbearable torture. Oh, what the hell? Okay. For the proactive girl, it was definitely the former, though she'd be too suspicious of the motives of anyone giving her such a gift to accept. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter tone that made him homesick, though at this very moment, his mind was still distracted with the wait for his face to reveal any discontent. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the grey sky. He had already waited a whole hour, but figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. And as long as he had the sound of the rain to soothe them, he could keep on waiting.
でも、そろそろ9時を過ぎるのか。どうなんだろう。
Would you have... You probably would, yeah, probably. I was gonna say, would you have like a concept of like actual time without electricity, like actual hours? Or would you just say, oh, it's about midday, oh, it's about late morning and stuff like that? Because you wouldn't have a clock, right? Maybe you would have like, I don't know. Because I know like a lot of the Native American tribes and stuff used to do a lot of that where they just didn't really use time as in clocks and stuff. They more so used the time of day by the sun and stuff. They didn't really have a concept of the hours and stuff. He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he listened to the rain. Sundial, yeah. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the patter of the rain on the window. The mood felt as damp as the air. It was then. He heard a heavy clatter of footsteps approaching.
よかった。忘れられているかと思った。
He could hear two sets of footsteps, one heavier set belonging to an adult. He breathed a sign of relief as the door slid open.
すまないね。随分とお待たせしちゃって。
The first person he saw was a man wearing glasses and an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamashiro, the one who brought me here.
ってあれ里中先生
里中
いないんですか？ひどいなあ。話し相手になってあげてと言ったのに。
Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic. And then, from behind him, here we go. Full reveal? Come on. With a tight-lipped expression that made it clear she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. Come on! Oh? Nope. Oh? Okay. Soujiro gulped. The sound of the rain on the window faded into nothingness. That's when he knew. This was how it felt when time stood still. Here she is! She blinked quickly a few times, as if taken aback. Why was anyone's guess? The boy was everything she expected a naive country boy to look like. However, she felt something she couldn't understand. Yo? His eyes widened slightly as if taken aback. The reason was obvious. Putting his feelings into words was a different matter altogether, so we'll never know exactly what he experienced in that moment. And that's when it hit him. He sensed he'd been touched by the hands of destiny. It was fate.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生の静木宗十郎くん。
Shizuki.
で、こっちの彼女が静木くんの案内役。
It's not often that you see the she sound being romanized into SI, but
うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
it's usually SHI. Okay, student council president Aoko Aozaki. His voice and the sound of the rain seemed distant. Ooh, I like this. I like this. This looks cool. This is how they first met. And such was their start, for better or worse, like the ephemeral beauty of fireworks. Oops. I like that composition. That shot was cool. It was commonly believed among the students that Aoko was always in a foul mood. But this gossip was 90% prejudice, as Aoko simply didn't have the time to be irritated 24/7. The reality was she simply didn't want to explain herself all the time, and therefore seemed angry about something, obvious or not. This idle gossip did, however, lead to her earning the title of one of school's 7 deadly threats. Beasts mentioned! The remaining 10% of the gossip was right on the mark. Aoko herself often had a feeling that her tendency to feel animosity toward harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under that 10%. Today, her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish display was befitting of her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash in the colors of the rain. To reduce electricity costs, school regulations forbid the use of lights during the day. This was the setting the three of them found themselves in. Hey, what's up, Tim? Her first expression was that his calm demeanor reminded her of a field of wildflowers. In spite of his perfect posture, his overall air felt placid, tame even. And though describing him as meek would be going too far, at the very least he was passive. Even through his uniform, she could see that he was thinner than average. Oh. He's bandaged up. His dark hair was unkempt, and he kept a came across as a wholly forgettable boy. If she had to look at him in a more positive light, she would describe him more a young man than a boy. It was his calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. Was that the cause of Aoko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room, and she was left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, not this outsider, who were the guests there, here. She felt an unidentifiable aggravation built within her, almost as if her right to be here was in question. Aoko herself felt herself raising natural defenses.
信じられない。私、今わけもなく怒ってない。
She hated not understanding things, her own emotions in particular. It pained her less than you would imagine for a perfectionist like her, but it still nagged her like a thorn in her side.
いやーほら青崎くん挨拶してあげなくちゃ。
Mr. Yamashiro's attempt to relieve the tension was equally irritating.
挨拶
After casting a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Aoko turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked like a stare down. And in that instant, the combination of her emotional state hurtled toward the innocent boy and skewered him. Uh-oh.
いや待たせたねしずきくん。
Hearing his name, Soujiro came to his senses. His stunned gaze shook loose. He took a deep breath to clear his head. Chalking up to nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out a smile and turned to the girl standing beside him.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生のしずき宗十郎くんで、こっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare, an unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Soujiro, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure, despite the shock at how confrontational she appeared. He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed, mistakenly, that this was how people treated each other in the city. Ah, classic, picking up wrong habits. Oh, misinformation. The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker. A girl ready to brawl. An earnest country boy desperate to understand. It was a murderous limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamashiro, for example. While he had thought he had made the right decision in choosing an honor student to help him out, she was in an inexplicably bad mood, and the tension in the air was undeniable. It was this moment that he realized his failure. His realization came far too late. Had come far too late. One false move, and this girl, for whom no problem was too large, would become a storm that would rock the very foundations of the school. Just as the almighty Joker card could bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear the blame for the scandal that ensued. Wow.
いけてる。二人とも気は合うようだね。それじゃあ僕はこの辺でいいかな。
Mr. Yamashiro left nervously as he crept toward the room.
僕は職員室にいるから終わったら来るように。いいかい青崎くん。なんていうか生徒会長としての度量の広さをこの際僕に信じさせてほしいかな。
He ran away. Mr. Yamashiro left, leaving the two in a locked-eyed state, one in which one set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All that remained in the room was an artless boy and a cross-armed guarded girl. The two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players agonizing over their first moves. There was only Aoko who was reading so much into the situation. She decided to put her irritation aside for the time being. With no reason to feel revulsion for him in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Soujiro.
まあいいわ。山城先生がヒルアンドンなのは今に始まったことじゃないし。それで、あなた名前は？
Damn. Her tone was nothing if not reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself.
ああ、静木宗十郎かな。君は青崎さんだったね。
For whatever reason, he came across as happy in his response.
さんはいいわ。柄じゃないから。こっちは静木くんでいい？
いいって何が？
だから呼び方。くん付けでいいかって聞いてるの。何よ。おかしなこと言った？私。
いや、すごく。
Wow, blunt. The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but quickly second-guessed himself.
いや、いいんだ。ごく一般的なんだろう。静木くんで頼む。君は青崎でいい。
Bro, this guy's gonna be a problem for her. Because he does not know how to socialize because of his circumstances, so he's just gonna be a problem for what he's gonna be saying to her. He's gonna be so unaware of her passive aggressiveness, and not just passive, also just aggressiveness towards him, and he's gonna be so oblivious that he's just gonna be a problem and he's gonna disarm her. She's not gonna know how to deal with him.
よろしく。
She followed her blunt reply with a swift turn away from him. While she was highly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand, it had been entrusted to her. It was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど、優しくしてあげる気はないから。時間も惜しいし、手早く行くわよ。
それは助かる。やっぱり時間は大切だ。
Aoko's blunt rancor was lost to him once again. Yep. Exactly. He just disarms her. Humans tend to be overly conscious about being ignored, whatever form that takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Aoko did her best to act professional and directed her guest into the hallway. There was no sunlight in the hallway, nor any sign of life. This was more like a prison than the cave that was the meeting room. As it dawned on Aoko that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again. Oh my god. Oh my god, what a thing to say.
まず聞いておくけど、山城先生から聞いたことは理解してる？
ああ、学校の仕組みについては分かった。この建物全部に同い年の人間がいるなんて、ちょっと想像できないけど。
そう、よかったわね。
Aoko rubbed her forehead. Kobayashi Yusuke! Oh shit. This Soujiro kid had no idea what he was in for. Apparently, all he had heard about the school was that it was a place where a lot of people met to study. High school teachers imparted the students their knowledge in various fields of study, while fostering discipline and creativity. But never did Aoko imagine that she would have to explain the concept of school itself to someone. Yes, fundamentals were important, but this was absurd. She had serious doubts whether he could even handle classes, but Mr. Yamashiro insisted that things would work out somehow. Sure. Soujiro had managed to pass the Chancellor exam after all. Barely. Interesting. Okay.
ま、私には関係ないけど。
I wonder why he even came here. I guess we'll see. Aoko grumbled mentally as she walked down the hallway. She consoled herself with the fact that today would be the only day she'd spend with this boy out of time. Or at least she tried to keep it that way.
青崎、
He asked, calmly trying to get her attention.
何？
こっちも一つ聞いていいかな。
だから何？
俺の気のせいだと思うんだが、君はまるで何かを睨んでいるように見える。
You can just ask her.
やはり今朝は悪いものだ。
Wow. Read her. His gaze revealed earnest concern, as if asking her if she'd remember to eat breakfast. Damn the face. It was like another hammer to her head. It was true that Aoko had been glaring at Soujiro the entire time. Glaring red-hot daggers, in fact. Not just at him, but the universe. Even on her best days, her roommate used to remark,
青子の視線は普通の人には厳しいわ。
Alice, most people can't handle your scowl, Aoko.
もう少し多くのことに寛大になるべきね。
She'd been warned that her emotions were so naked on her face that people treated her like a powder keg. How naive could the boy be that he could not pick up on this?
私をバカにしてるってわけじゃなさそうよね、この場合。
Even she found her own attempt to reassure herself unconvincing. It began to dawn on Aoko, far too late, that compared to her, this laid-back chancellor student might as well have been from another planet.
いいわ。言葉にしないとわからないようだから言うけど、まるでじゃなくて、ズバリそうなの。あなたの気のせいじゃなくて、私は視線で遠回しに感情を表現してたの。いちいち声に出すのも、会話にするのも面倒だから。
And that's fair. In response to her words, the Martian clapped his hands together.
なるほど。どうしてそうしたいのかはわからないが、確かにそっちの方が手っ取り早い意思表現だ。
Soujiro accepted her reasoning without argument, though he still had no idea what kinds of emotion she was trying to express. It was as if he could hear the words but didn't grasp the meaning. Ideas that should have connected were instead separated into blocks.
確かにずれてるわ、こいつ。
Mr. Yamashiro's words made sense to her now. What was odd about this boy went way beyond naivety. A stranger in a strange land he may be, but it was only civilized to forge him some jet-lagged induced confusion. Forgive.
じゃ、とりあえずあなたの教室に行くから。
She had regained her composure. Soujiro raised his hand and stopped in his tracks.
あと一つ。
Aoko waited for Soujiro to continue. The boy was patient to a fault. She rubbed her forehead with her hand again, nursing a vague feeling of uneasiness.
これもちょっとした疑問なんだが、なんで君は怒ってるんだ？
No! Bro! You're...
怒るのが商売とか、そういう家柄の人なのか？
Does it run in your family? No, you can't say that! Does you being a bitch run in your family, perhaps? You can't say that! A long silence. Though she knew it wouldn't change the situation, she remembered her regret at answering the phone that morning. He meant no harm. She repeated this thought like a mantra in an attempt to keep her impulses in check.
別にあなたのせいじゃないから気にする必要はないわ。ただ、この一瞬とお昼まで眠っていた場合を計りにかけたら、あまりに利益の違いがあって頭を抱えただけよ。
With that vague answer, she started to walk again, and turned her gaze away from this rude stranger named Soujiro Shizuki. While what constitutes normal is certainly up to debate, most would undoubtedly refer to him as so. He was a simple and nice boy with nondescript features. If he were an ice cream flavor, he would be vanilla. Nah, he would be milk. And Soujiro found Aoko to be very businesslike and full of life. There was a certain purpose to her movements, as they began and ended in an orderly fashion. The way her finger raised when she pointed at things. The way she made her way across the hallways and classrooms. And the way she would occasionally glance back at him to make sure he was keeping pace. Each and every movement was so impressive that he couldn't take his eyes off her. Aoko showed him to his homeroom class C of the 11th grade. The room certainly displayed more of a human touch than the previous meeting room, but Soujiro was none the wiser as to its function. Aoko gave a brief explanation before they visited individual subject classrooms, as well as the gym, cafeteria, locker room, and school infirmary. Soujiro asked so many questions that much time passed before they reached the AV room on the second floor.
まずいな。
Soujiro stopped, looking genuinely concerned.
あと20分経つと1時だ。
20 to 1. Damn!
嘘でしょ。うちの校舎そんな広くないわよ。
The tour had begun around 10, which meant that the 3 hours had passed. Damn! A tour of a school shouldn't take anywhere near this long.
そうだったわね。行く先々で根掘り葉掘り聞かれちゃ、そりゃ何時間でも経つわ。
It's still light out. Aoko glared at Soujiro. She was being sarcastic, of course, knowing full well he would never pick up on it. To her surprise, he looked down apologetically, unable to hide his dejection.
なんだこいつ。ちゃんとしてるっちゃ。
The guy before her now was nothing like earlier. In contrast to seeing his once impenetrable veneer when they first met, she found herself feeling sympathetic. Momentarily at least, until her irritation returned to full force.
で、何がまずいの？覚えることが多すぎてパンクしたなんて言わないでね。
Damn.
いや、それもあるけど、学校のことは別にして、1時になるとまずいんだ。
What happens at 1? Do you turn into a werewolf? Soujiro's gaze wandered as if worried about something. If he was worried about the weather, he would have a hard time seeing it as there were no windows in this hallway.
へえ、時間を気にするってことは用事があるのね。そう。人の予定を引っかき回しておいて、自分だけ好きなようにやろうって言うんだ。なんだ、顔に似合わずいい人ね、君。
いや、褒めても何も出ないぞ。
This guy.
誰も褒めちゃいないわよ。
She yelled at him, unable to hold back her fury.
で
それで一体何の用なの？
Soujiro's face lit up as he finally understood what she was asking
そ
him.
こは秘密にしておきたい。
He said with a perfectly straight face.
慣れ始めたつもりだったけど、こいつのこういったテンポには失神しそうになるわ。
Her frustration was natural. Still, she did everything she could to stifle her feelings and fake a smile.
しずきくん？
She said she was better at it. She took a step forward.
秘密だってば。
Feeling the mood change drastically, Soujiro took a step back. And another, and another. No matter how many steps he took back, she kept edging towards him. She was smiling, but he thought he could see blood boiling beneath her skin.
これ最後の質問にしとくわね。あなた、私をからかって楽しい？
Oh, that's a dangerous question. He had no intention of mocking her, though at this point, he doubted presenting any evidence to prove that this would do much to erase that forced smile on her face.
わかった。説明する。
Okay? His arms raised in surrender. She halted her advance and freed her face from that unseemly smile.
実は1時からアルバイトがあるんだ。
Okay.
でも、ここはそういうの禁止なんだろ？
Oh.
そうだけど、あ、禁止されてるから秘密にしようと思ったの？
Dweeb.
バカね。それなら許可さえ下りていれば問題ないわよ。
知ってる。試験の時に許可はもらってる。
Okay.
へえ。
Aoko's face lit up as she realized he might not be the piece of work she thought him to be. Yet.
しかし、許可は一つしかもらえなかった。
What?
一つって。
これでも2件減らしたんだ。生活費だけで大変なのに、学費まで稼がなくちゃいけない。なのに働き先は一つだけというのはあんまりだと思わないか？
いや、あんまりなのはあなたの方だと思うけど。
And though still irritated, her opinion on him changed a little. She was impressed that he was able to take care of his tuition and living expenses all on his own. She could also empathize with having no time to oneself. Her anger began to subside. The words part-time job were about the last thing she ever expected to hear out of this country boy's mouth.
そういうことなら仕方ないわね。
Yeah? $20 is $20.
いいわ、行きなさいよ。事情は分かったから。
青崎はいいのか？
She had no idea what this question meant. His question meant, but she at least understood he was trying to be considerate, which also took her by surprise. She figured he'd be just as dense about people's feelings as he was about everything else.
別に。私もこのまま帰るから。
First, though, she thought it best that they both stop by the faculty room. Mr. Yamashiro had mentioned that the transfer procedure had already been completed, so all that remained was for him to sign off on her duties.
先生、案内終わりました。
それはお疲れ様。しずきくんもお疲れ様。それで校舎を回った感想はどうかな？
ありがとうございます。なんというか、とても学校ですね。
Totemo gakko. Listen, it's like a real school.
そうかそうか。うん、明日から頑張りなさい。
She had no interest whatsoever in this pointless wrap-up meeting.
山城先生のことは気にしないでいいわ。教え子に厄介なことを押し付けてふんぞり返っているぐらい職員室が好きなんだから、何時間でも待ってるでしょ。いえ、待ってるべきじゃない？
そうか。青崎がいいんならいいんだな。
ん？
There it was again. Whatever Soujiro was getting at, Aoko had no idea.
それじゃあ行くよ。今日はありがとう。
Also, it is interesting that the narration and stuff is not from any of their POVs. It's completely like separate. It's like just an outside narration, so we don't really get to see into their heads much.
今日だけよ、今日だけ。
She shooed him away with her hand. His face bent into a broad smile, as if he found the gesture endearing. It was a softer expression that she had grown accustomed to seeing out of him. Yeah, it's fully third person. It was the kind of smile that would make anyone smile back. Well, most people at least. Aoko Aozaki didn't betray the slightest hint of a smile.
それじゃあまた。
And with that friendly farewell, Soujiro walked towards the end of the hallway. Or so she thought before he turned into the next class over. Soujiro headed straight for one of the classroom's windows. Whereupon he opened it with ease. Bro, the chill November air filled the room as the soft sounds of the rain doubled in volume. Is he going to jump out? Bro? In that instant, she realized his intention with opening the window. She really wished she didn't.
いや、待て待て待て!
He already had one leg out the window when she dashed to stop him.
何するつもりよ、あんたは！
何って、アルバイトに行くんだけど。
Bro?
その窓は人が出入りするところじゃないの。だいたいここ何階だと思ってるの？
She saw the light of understanding dawning his eyes.
死ぬところだった。2階から降りたら危なすぎる。
I guess they didn't have any tall buildings or stuff like that, I guess.
危ないのはあんたの頭。
It's the lack of sounding between your ears that's dangerous, yeah. Her insult went right over his head.
あのね、こっちじゃ窓から人は出入りしないの。さっき言っとくべきだった。
知ってるよ。時間がないんで慌ててたんだ。
By killing yourself?
ありがとう。これからは気をつける。
He pulled his leg back inside and closed the window. His school uniform was soaking wet from the rain.
いいけど、私は別に。あなたがどこから外に出ようが関係ないもの。ただ、 できれば私の前ではやらないでほしいだけよ。
Don't kill yourself in front of me. Okay.
それより、あなた、本当に明日から学校に来るの？
来るよ。不安だけど案内してもらったし。
He bid her farewell before running away down the hall. She hoped he would walk down the stairs and leave through the school entrance like a normal person.
はあ、大丈夫なのか？あんなんで。
The image of him disappearing into the distance popped into her head in spite of her ire. She had no intention of him spending any more time with She had no intention of spending any more time with him, and yet she felt strangely anxious. She couldn't tell if the feeling was fueled by concern or irritation. Why had she even gotten angry with this insignificant transfer student in the first place? A strange day with a strange transfer student resulting in strange emotions. Her head tilted as she reflected on what should have been a more enjoyable day than the irritating experience she just had.
ま、いっか。どうせこれっきりなんだし。
Yeah, surely, that's how the story ends. The sound of the rain echoed quietly all around her. The grey sky seemed frozen in time. It was impossible to discern whether it was morning or evening. Mr. Yamashiro and Aoko were likely the only ones left at school. The unlit classroom looked overly gloomy and ominous as Aoko stood in it alone. She pulled up her left sleeve. Her dainty and remarkable watch showed that it was almost 1 o'clock.
時間、合ってる。
Oh, yeah. Without a watch. She looked out the window and at the grounds below. She saw a boy in uniform running through the rain without an umbrella, a sight she must have seen before, but for whatever reason affected her far more than she wished. Oh. Aoko did not stop by the faculty room before heading home. While Mr. Yamashiro's offer to drive her home was tempting, she decided it would ultimately be far more satisfying to ruin his day just as he had hers. Fair. I respect it. She walked as quietly as she could toward the entrance and opened her bright red umbrella. As she had predicted that morning, the rain was waning in the afternoon. At this rate, it would probably cease completely in an hour or so. The distant sunshine would likely have reached her by the time she arrived home.
ま、それも悪くないか。
She shrugged her shoulders in resignation. She neither liked nor disliked rain, but she found herself enjoying her walk home with her red umbrella in hand. The teachers at Misaki High School weren't fond of bright colors, so Aoko's red umbrella was an unusual sight. A ghost story about how the umbrella was once pure white had been making the rounds, but it featured Aoko instead of a ghost. Okay, a ghost story. It was with that umbrella that she made her way towards Misaki Station. Misaki Private High School took its namesake from the town it was in. The area was once a sprawl of farmland and woodland, but rapid growth over the last 10 years had led to unprecedented modernization. There were some who fought to preserve Misaki's natural treasures.
残すことには賛成ですが、それでは残すだけになってしまうでしょう。
Is this Misaki town here a fictional one? Kind of like Fuyuki? You know how Fuyuki is like based off of Kobe, but it's like it's actually fictional. With those words, the mayor snuffed out the voices of the minority and ushered in a long-term plan for new urban development. Yeah? Okay. More than enough funds for the urban development were collected, and the unassuming town of Misaki became the largest municipality? I don't know how you pronounce this. Of Misaki City in merely 10 years. Even though it lacked the modernity of neighboring Yashirogi, or the elegance of Misaki Hills.
それも当然よね。どういじくっても、もともとが山中の宿場町だし、山ごと切り崩すって言うんなら別だけど。
Urbanization had been contained to the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. Because Misaki is actually a place south of Osaka, because I was staying there for a bit when I was in Osaka. There is a place called Misaki, but yeah, it's obviously different. No relation to this one. Urbanization had been contained to the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. The exhaustion of funds succeeded in protecting the old Misaki, where the citizens could not. It became a truly old suburban town, welcoming an increasingly urban population with its vestiges of old country charm. Misaki High School was a private school established long before the town's current state. The original campus, built 50 years ago, was located high up in the mountains, making its current location its second incarnation. The path to the old grounds was not only steep and remote, it had become an overgrown game trail with the passage of time. For these reasons, among others, Misaki High School had been shuttered until almost 20 years ago, when it received a donation from a department store chain that allowed for the construction of a new campus in the city. And thus, Misaki High School reopened its doors, the old woodland campus forgotten. In fact, most of the students attending Misaki High School were not from Misaki at all. The hearty rustic people in this country town preferred prefectural schools to private ones. Truth be told, Aoko herself was one of them. All she had wanted at a junior high was to move to Tokyo, where she hoped to spend her days touring her favorite bands on her way to entering a public university. Oh shit, okay. But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure. Toko mentioned. So here she was, walking alone in town with only a red umbrella to keep her company on what should have been a day off.
思い返してみると、私の人生ってなんか災難続きっぽい。
Her frustration evaporated into the cool December air.
でもま、いっか。退屈だけはしないわけだし。
With those words, her mood brightened up a bit as she left the school in her wake. The busier part of town met her at the bottom of the gently sloping road. Oh, heels? Who's that? Misaki train station was brand new. Once looking no prettier than an abandoned factory, it had been renovated into a multi-purpose structure with huge department stores on its east and west sides. When the department stores first opened, Aoko and her friends had been impressed with their modern feel, but in time, the stores too became dated. She had no shopping to do today, so she passed them by. What she really wanted to do was the rest of the cafe, but she fought the urge, knowing her roommate would never let her hear the end of it if she frittered away her money. Huh? She looked back and blinked. For just a moment, she could have sworn she had seen someone suspicious in a red dress out of the corner of her eye. Oh, okay. Outskirts of the Greater Kanto region? Okay. It must have been her imagination. Yeah, it must have been the rain. The sixth sense chill she was experiencing down her spine was a familiar one at this point. She continued her walk home, brushing off the event as if it had never happened. In time, the chill faded and all that was left was the sound of the town. She sighed heavily. Had she imagined it? Even if it had been all in her head, she was far from comfortable with the feeling that still lingered.
夏場の方ってもう少しこう。
She grumbled out under her breath.
波乱万丈、商売繁盛、諸行無常と。そうそう、忙しさに愚痴を言っても始まらないわ。
Unfortunately, summer and bugs go hand in hand. She could see how bugs And she could see how bugs could be drawn to all the sweet fruit. Rank with grease and heat, the kitchen was closed for the time being. The lunch rush had come and gone. But one last battle remained, dinner time. Only after the evening chaos could the kitchen crew remove their white armor and call it a day. In the midst of the war zone was a lone newcomer.
これ着るんですか?
Oh god. Oh god, this is not gonna go great. His voice was uneasy, betraying how new he was.
気持ちはわかる。俺もどうかと思うけど、店長の言うことだから、もう笑顔で乗り越えてくれ。これも商店街の明日のためなんだとよ。本気で申し訳ないんだが、雨も止んだし、なんとか行ってきてくれないか？無事帰ってきたら晩飯おごってやっから。
His bright orange co-worker clasped his hands together as if to beg for forgiveness as he saddled him with this unreasonable task. Damn. 10 years ago, Misaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything had changed. The front of the station was now lined with tall, multi-story buildings, and the residential areas were similarly full of apartment-built complexes. The once rustic scenery around the station had long become a thing of the past. Shiro Inuzuka was the only place in the city that still contained vestiges of the old town, a pocket of the past inside an urban jungle. The road extended up a conspicuously high hill to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago, it had been considered unwise to build on high ground, so nobody lived above a certain elevation. Shiro Inuzaka, sitting as it did on top of a hill in the middle of a town, was no exception to that convention and had no residences to speak of. The asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving way to a mountain road that was swallowed into the cover of trees. A lone vending machine stood to mark the boundary between town and beyond. Even the children knew that there was nothing beyond the new playground in development that so enthralled them. Well, that was not entirely true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. Dun dun dun. Aoko Aozaki traversed the long slope. Below her, she could see the whole of Misaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from this height. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately, Misaki City was very much landlocked. While it was overcast at the moment, the scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. The view was the one thing that made the arduous climb worthwhile, and today, she had been denied even that.
ああ、雨の日は自転車も使えないし、1日に2回ぐらいバスでも通ってくれないもんかな、ほんと。
Aoko had been using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but the journey had never gotten easier.
あれ、鍵閉まったまま？アリス、まだ帰ってきてないんだ。
With a weary shrug, she put her hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly, the heavy gate swung open as if to welcome her home. There sits atop that hill a haunted house. That's how the story, much shared around town, used to begin. But fresh rumors around the house had sprung to life almost as fast as the town's modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, lights can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder of crows often gathers atop the hill before mysteriously vanishing. Children get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Late at night, shrieking sound can be heard. All the way to town, this particular piece of slander was the one that Aoko wished to discredit the most. Oh. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up and down the hill. Interesting. The rumors spread and grew by the day. And while they grew, the house that everyone thought had rotted away was restored over the recent years. Deep in a wood on top of a hill, no one dared to approach. like a ruin, shrouded from view even on the brightest of days, stood a relic out of time, a building from a fairy tale. The house. Was the Kongji Mansion. It kind of reminds me of the prototype house, the Aoko house. Everyone in town knew about the witch's house on the hill. It was an unabashedly haunted house where Aoko Aozaki resided for reasons known only to her. Needless to say, it was not really haunted. The Kongji family home was a grand western-style mansion with a long and storied history, stretching all the way back to England. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses, worth of rooms, and was surrounded by a large all-encompassing courtyard. The perimeter of the grounds was surrounded by a high iron fence covered in thorny vines. There was also an annex to the main building. Given such extravagance, it was no wonder that it inspired rumors. To the town's residents... Oh, can you guys see that? Yeah, you can. I thought I turned it off. Wait, give me 1 second. I want to turn off all notifications for Discord because it's gonna bother me. I don't know where to do it. Fuck. I don't know. Whatever, bro. To the town residents, the mere existence of such lavish and out-of-place mansion atop the hill was a cause for suspicion. Rumors, lies, and slander were the prices to be paid for fame. With only 2 lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here.
ま、私はともかく、アリスはそういうのやりかねないし。
Okay. Interesting. She put her hand on the front door. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with a brass lock, and yet, it was secured with a little more than a simple keyhole. Pushing it open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. And by the way, if vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. Interesting. Much like the weather outside, the foyer was overcast with shades of grey. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. The ceiling was 2 floors high. The only light in the room came from the skylight. It was particularly gloomy on rainy days. On moonless nights, it was like the world itself ceased to be. Aoko decided the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she had not been able to relax until she changed her clothes, she started up the stairs. She would not be able to relax. The stairs called up the wall to the 2nd floor hall. There was a 3rd floor attic as well, accessible from the far end of the hall. She had never set foot in there in the 2 years she had lived here, though. Interesting. The Kongji Mansion was more or less divided into 2 wings, east and west. Aoko had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook world or lead to an attic that had only been used for storage these last 5 years. Yeah, we're going to Narnia? Aoko's room was at the end of the east wing's long corridor. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reason other than she thought it would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a large bed, her beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe and chest for her clothes, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. That was the extent of what she'd brought from home. Her entire life of 16 years reduced to this. She'd also borrowed the next room down for her own purposes.
そうだ。アリスにもらった見張りと壊れてないかチェックしないと。
The watchtower? She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door said as proof of the life she had been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she had lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been. It was a room for the person she would eventually become. A place of solitude that only she could enter, or so she thought.
うわ、壊れてるどころか跡形もなく消え去ってる。やっぱ自己流アレンジはまだ早かったか。いいわよ。
What?
笑いなさいよ、コマ撮り。
It vanished without it. What? The nosy neighbor that had intruded upon her sanctuary flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Aoko did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her approach for optimism. She changed out of her uniform and went to the first floor. Okay, casual clothes, nice. Down the stairs, she opened the door to the east wing, into the corridor as dark as a cellar. The absence of windows meant it was pitch dark without the lights on, so she flicked the switch and entered the nearby doorway. Sani.
電気のない生活か。想像したくないな。
In the CRT. It had been her idea to update the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were large majestic sofas and a luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it was a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of place. It stood looking over the other furniture like the emperor with no clothes. The mansion's owner would have rather done without it, but to a commoner like Aoko, it was an essential commodity. They had fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an agreement, and now mutually enjoyed this modern comfort. Okay.
Nanda, 人のことは言えないか。うちも案外時代錯誤な家だった。
Now, in a somewhat pleasant mood, she decided to brew some tea. She boiled some water in the kitchen, prepared a teapot, and made herself some black tea. Damn. This seems chill. This seems cool. With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea, then another. She vibing? She is vibing. The OST is helping as well. Lulled by the ticking of the clock, she took a third sip as she pondered how to spend her afternoon. The sofa almost seemed to be inviting her, and she sunk even further into its comforting embrace. Alice? Aoko barely opened her eyes as she lifted her body up from the cushions. Oh, this is Al. Okay. This was no dream or delusion. At some point, a girl had sat down across from her. Not the least bit surprised, she reached for her teacup, but the tea within had gone completely cold.
寝てた。
She asked that question to the girl on the other side of the table. The girl answered without lifting her gaze. You didn't know how she looked? No. I don't know why, but whenever I heard the name Alice. I don't know why, whenever I heard about her, I always assumed she would be long hair and a bit younger. I don't know why. Oh, well, I guess she looks completely different than I imagined. I did not know this is gonna be what she looked like. I think I did check out some of the animations and stuff, but I completely forgot. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had darker hair than Aoko, and her icy eyes were focused on the pages in front of her. Yeah, I think that's why, Maze. I think I kind of like thought Alice in Wonderland kind of persona. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. Okay. In Aoko's humble opinion, the gloominess suited her. She evoked something like out of a painting. Same way as Ayaka? That's cool. And there was something unreal about her, as if she were frozen in time. The white of her gently arched neck was so lovely that even Aoko found herself enchanted by it. The girl was one of the haunted house's 2 residents. Her name was Alice Kongji, and she was the same age as Aoko.
私、どれくらい寝てた？
1時間と少し。ここで眠ると風邪ひくわよ。
Alice answered indifferently, not that it bothered Aoko, who was now used to it. Hanazawa? That's... wow, okay. She looked at the clock on the wall and saw it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. Aoko has the same VA as Sushi Goza, and that's why she's the GOAT! The day had been a rough one for her, and she had slept little the night before, so it's no surprise that she had dozed off for as long as she'd had.
起こしてくれてもよかったのに。せっかくの紅茶が冷めちゃったじゃない。
私が来た時はもう冷めてたわ。
でしょうね。行ってみただけよ。
Aoko drank down the rest of the cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated Kongji Mansion, there was more than enough to clear her head and wake up. Kongji Mansion. Okay, yeah, makes
こうなる
sense.
と、フォートナム&メイソンも何もないわね。おかえり、
お
アリス。玉の贅沢もあんた抜きじゃ閉まらないってことかしら。今日は薬日か天中殺か。ちょっと早いけど、お参りってのも十分ありかもね。
Aoko shrugged her shoulders as if resigning herself to her fate.
それで何があったの？
After 2 years together, they knew each other quite well. Aoko had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked without raising her head, and Aoko gave her the details.
まず謝らなくちゃいけない。昨日徹夜で完成させた例のあれ、意味がなくなっちゃったのよ。ちょっと目を離した隙に沸騰しすぎて壊れちゃったみたい。
I think it bowled over and fell apart.
そうならないよう循環のコードを 2,3 本外したり縫合したりしたんだけど。
Shuffle the circulation codes. Interesting. Aoko tried to laugh her off as if it was someone else's problem.
どういうこと？
今朝休養が入って学校に呼び出し受けたの。そこで転入生の世話を押し付けられて一日が無残にも消費されちゃって、帰ってきたら跡形もなく消えてました。怒る？アリス。
別に青子の器物破損にいちいち怒っていたら一生分の口論をすることになるでしょ。代用品はあるからまた一から始めればいいわ。それより怒ってるのはあなたの方じゃないの？
Alice was very much on point today. It was true that despite outward appearances, Aoko was seething with frustration. That aside,
この転入生っていうのがひどくずれててね。すごい山奥で暮らしてたらしくて、こっちの常識が通じないんだから。三問以下って言葉があるけど、あれって本当のことなのね、アリス。
Alice hissed her head in response to hearing her name. But Aoko kept going on before she could get a word in edgewise. Aoko, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place.
初対面から尺に触るやつだったけど、教室を案内した時なんか失神しそうになったわ。そいつ、教室で教師と1対1で授業を受けるもんだと思ってたらしいの。それはそれでまだ流せる。許容範囲よ、あの程度の冗談は。
Wait, okay, so if I go to the bottom, it disappears. Okay.
で、私が簡潔かつ丁寧に教室の何たるかを教えた後で、そいつなんて言ったと思う？それで青崎、他の教室は何に使うんだ？ですって。教室に他も何もないでしょ？なんていうか、そいつは少しでも説明を怠るとそのままで納得しちゃうのよ。何も疑問に思わないというか、想像力が欠如してるっていうか、想像することに慣れてないっていうか。
Yeah, she is thinking a lot about him.
まあ、一度言ったことはちゃんと分かってるっぽいからバカってわけじゃないんだけど。
あなたが人を批評するのは珍しいわね。そういうダメな人、気にするたちだったの？
Yep, she's thinking about him a lot.
みじんたりとも気にしないわよ。けど、明日からどんな間違いをしでかすのか、ちょっと心配なだけ。
What she was really worried about was having to clean up that mess if and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean she had no real idea why she could not get him out of his head. Out of his head? She could not get him out of her head, I'm guessing.
とにかく変なやつなの。案外アリスと気が合うかも。
Wow. Okay.
三問一回はいい言葉ね。
But from her eyes, it was clear that the question of whether they would get along was irrelevant, given that they would never meet in the first place. Aoko gave an uncommittal response.
ところでアリス、さっきから何読んでるの？
霊的進化論の二次創作。スピリチュアルダイアリのまがいもの。
Spiritual Evolution, Spiritual Diary.
ああ、スウェーデンボリー。そんなの今更読んでも仕方ないんじゃない？
新書なら退屈だけど、これは義書だから。彼の欠点と長所を劇的に褒め上げている。よくできた冒険小説のようよ。立ちはだかる秘密組織の名前がカントとか気が利いているわ。筆跡はあなたのおじいさんのものだけど。
へえ、あの人そういう趣味まであったんだ。割とユーモアがあったのね。惜しい人を亡くしたわ。
Aoko seemed nostalgic over her now deceased grandfather.
あなたのおじいさん、夏に頼りをくれたけど。
よしてよ、死んだものと考えたいのに。
Aoko sighed and laid back on the sofa. The soft cushions caved in under her weight.
話は戻るけど。
Alice shot a glance at Aoko. Her body, buried in the sofa, remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Aoko had tuned out of the conversation. Alice silently chastised her with a look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. Interesting. If she just ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. They would eventually get up and leave today's mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Aoko Aozaki was.
いいわよ。何？
She asked, still lying down.
今日できなかったのは少し痛いわね。
だから反省してるって。学校優先は一人前になってから、でしょ。
Here we go.
ならいいけど。
The coldness of her voice made Aoko gnash her teeth. She knew what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wore for school was different than the way she lived at home. While it could be called hiding in plain sight, Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was,
覚悟を決めろって言いたいのよね、あんたは。
Today's failure was not a colossal one. She just happened to upset the delicate balance between her home and school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. And yeah, that careless mistake was a clear sign of Aoko's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係ない。これは私が私で決めなくちゃいけないこと。
She had only known for sure for the last year and a half. But she'd had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choice, and the day will come. It was a little wonder that her morals and consciousness had been stripped away. It was a little wonder that her morals and consciousness had been stripped away. Oh. Make the choice, and the day will come. Interesting. Interesting. What's up, Fotaru? Aoko pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze.
オッケー、アリス。来週中に決着をつけよう。それでいいんでしょ？
ええ、青子がいいなら。
Aoko could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar for the second time that day. Interesting. Even in the comfort of her own, she couldn't banish thoughts of that country boy from her mind.
じゃあ、下準備はよろしくね。私まだできないし。
場所は例の公園でいい？
妥当な線ね。あ、でももう一軒の方は？そっちの方が急務じゃない？
時と場合、森に変化があれば教えるわ。
Interesting. After that brief exchange, Alice turned her attention to the book on her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationship as roommates. Aoko grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Aoko decided to tune in to a variety show that had already started. Alice started to speak but suddenly cut herself off. One of her delicate hands raised to her mouth. She would always cut herself off the second she realized she was about to say something trivial. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late, and she would make a gesture like that, like the one she was making now. It occurred to Aoko that the sound her cute little roommate made just now was different than the wah she blurted in times past.
何？
Aoko turned down the volume of the TV. Her intense eyes lit up like those of a mischievous cat.
どうということはないんだけど。
ないんだけど？
Alice looked away bashfully, not knowing if she should bring it up or not. It was times like these that her expression carried a real warmth and surprising charm. If she could see her in this moment, Alice's father would have to admit that her name stood that perfectly. If you could see her in this moment.
今日帰ってくるときおかしなものを見て誰かに話そうと思っていたんだけど。
What's up? Aoko nodded, beckoning her to continue.
つまらない。本当に意味のないことよ。
Yeah, I get it, Fotaru. I get it.
けど、どう考えてもそんなことをする理由がわからない。青子。人間ぐらいの大きな猫がひょこひょこ出前をする理由ってわかる？
Is it a mascot? For a second, Aoko thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. One would think that about anyone, really. But she seemed completely serious. Even if Alice's sense of humor fell flat for Aoko, this story already sounded more fanciful than Alice's usual attempt at jokes. Aoko concluded that her roommate was talking about something she could actually see.
その話には2つぐらい信じがたい部分があるけど、1つずつ論破していい？
いいの。私もからくりぐらいは思いつくから。ただ理由がわからないから聞いてるの。わざわざ精巧な猫のぬいぐるみを着て、出前のてんやものを届けに行くことってそんなに簡単かしらね。
Oh, it's Soujiro, isn't it?
難易度以前にそれをやる人間の常識性を疑うけどね、私は。
Alice nodded tentatively at her words.
まあ、世の中いろいろあるから、私たちみたいなのもいれば、下界から遮断された山奥で暮らしていたやつまで10人十色よ。私だったら見かけたら声かけて理由を尋ねただろうけど。
Alice's gaze drifted at that.
暮れゆく住宅街にさまよう出前猫か。背景が夕焼けだったらファンタジーだったでしょうに。で、今日の夕飯どうする？せっかく話が出たし、私らもてんやものにしようか。
Ooh, sounds good. Aoko loved getting takeout, and her face glowed as she spoke. She had no hard rules for dinner. They had no hard rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood to cook, they made it a point to make enough for two. At the very worst, this meant entire weeks without dinner. But the two of them agreed that this was the system that worked best for them. Fair enough. Whether they found cooking to be too much effort or simply liked ordering out. Nights like this one were a common occurrence, much to the chagrin of the residents of Misaki Town. Delivering to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of this hill, the source of their disgruntlement.
時間は8時前。ギリギリセーフね。私今月がいいな。あそこの月見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし。
月見そば。The hungry student council president laid out a stack of takeout menus like she might fan a deck of cards, and excitedly scanned for anything that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing so much as a glance.
悪いけど、私夕飯過ぎるの。
Damn! Shut down. Oh, oops. With those words, Aoko froze. All deliveries required a minimum of 2 items, so she was out of luck without an accomplice. Damn, 2 items minimum? That sucks. Cruel society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to a princess who only ordered a single serving of food. Incidentally, to counteract orders from the Hilltop Mansion, the restaurants had declared the minimum number of orders will be 3 starting next year. Lama. Aoko and Alice were still in the dark about this fiendish change in direction.
この裏切り者だから帰ってくるのが遅かったのね。帰宅部、学校までバス徒歩込みで片道20分のあんたがなんで5時以降に帰ってくんのか考えるべきだったわ。
Unfortunately for Aoko, she had been too out of it to even remember that she was the one who'd fallen asleep.
ああ、ひどい女。そういう時は残された一人のためにお土産買ってくるのが暗黙の了解だったのに。私だってこの前の外食の時はアリスの分も買ってきたじゃない。
It was unknown how serious Aoko was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up hungry that morning, and from the time she was called into school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea. It was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. She knew it was her own fault, but she persisted, wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier.
この前ってあれのこと？あなたが都心に出向いた時、 夕食にお寿司を食べてきたのに、
あ
お土産はなぜかコンビニエンスストアのビニール袋だったって話。
Aoko had kicked a hornet's nest.
何よ、買ってこないよりはマシでしょ。
真実は時に隠蔽すべきね。
Alice's icy gaze pierced right through her. Aoko had certainly crossed the line by going on and on about how the sushi circled around the restaurant while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shops that started popping up at the time. They were nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin, given the right circumstances.
わかった、わかりました。じゃあ今回のは前のと帳消しってことでいいわね。
Alice went back on her book without so much as recognizing the question. The fact that she did not confirm it made Aoko anxious.
仕方ない。今日は薬日だし、おとなしく台所に立って料理の腕を磨くとしましょう。
She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular.
あ、聞き忘れてた。アリス、どこで夕食済ませたの？
Alice's hand froze on her current page. She suddenly shut the book she was reading and stood up, as if at wit's end. She walked across the drawing room with her book in hand. Drawing room. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned toward Aoko.
聞きたい。
まあ、なんとなく。
Aoko nodded timidly, cowed by Alice's sudden vigor. Alice continued in her matter-of-fact way.
その猫が余ったメニューをくれたのよ。
And with that brief response, she left the room. Wow. Wow. What a story. That was chapter 1? Two hours in. Okay, let me get some more tea and quick toilet break, and then we continue on. Extra chapters? Probably, yeah, I think so. Archive for 1.5, bet. So, do we think we should do the extra ones now or after finishing all of it? I don't know what the now? Now? Okay. Okay. Is this... Oh yeah, this is 1.5. No, I don't want to skip it. I definitely want to play through it, you know? So, because I mean, I paid for the whole game, so I'm going to play the whole game. Morning in the city moved incredibly fast. It made one wonder if it was even a morning at all, with people so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. The unfamiliar roar that woke him reminded him of a rock slide. The identity of the monstrous sound was the engine of a motorcycle. Mr. Yoshida, his neighbor, was leaving for work. Whole discounted game, true. It was hard to determine when night ended and morning began here. The town's urbanization was synonymous with insomnia.
信じられない。まだ日も昇ってないのに。吉田さんはどこに行くのか。
Oh, you naive boy. Sluggishly lifted himself off the floor. He caught himself starting to survey his surroundings out of habit before deciding better of it, and made his way to the washroom. There, he poured himself a cup of water and slowly gulped it down. Having been relegated to well water until recently, he found the convenience pleasing. Yep. Please was definitely the word that best described how he felt. Civilization is about erasing inconveniences through optimization. The reduction of labor in our daily lives. Mr. Koga had taught him that while the essentials were easier than ever to get our hands on, life itself was growing more and more complex. So too was it his duty to adjust to his new reality. As a distant relative of Soujiro's father, Mr. Koga had taken Soujiro in, even though the boy had been a little more than a stranger in his life till that point. Mr. Koga had helped him get registered at school and find an apartment to lease. Though he had insisted that Soujiro handle his residence card and register his change of address by himself. This series of procedures proved exceedingly difficult for Soujiro, but knowing that this was a part of his new city life, he did his best to complete them diligently. While they may have a reputation for being a stickler for the rules, city officers aren't all that bad. It was the first thing Soujiro learned after beginning his life in the city. 2 weeks had elapsed since he left the countryside. As uneasy as living alone made him feel, he felt he could make it work. It was not as if the people here spoke another language, and Mr. Koga was absolutely right about how practical the rules of the city were. Soujiro continued down the hard but surprisingly walkable path. Before work, he jogged in the park to pass the time. Even exercise like this offered lessons for Soujiro to learn. Each passing person was a new face to look at. The old man who greeted them, the young worker with his eyes on the ground, and the girl on the bench surrounded by birds. They were all unfamiliar sights to Soujiro. Unaccustomed to the city, he labored to understand its rules. Whether they were complex, simple, or completely meaningless, compared to mountain life, which only dealt with nature, city life left one with way too many options. One could argue that such an environment was toxic for Soujiro. His life was a string of unsettling moments, but amongst it all, there were rules that he sincerely admired. For one, the city revolved around various forms of profit and loss. The fact that one only needed money to get the bare essentials to survive the city was a comforting thought to Soujiro. Ah, okay. Only money. You only need money.
いや、そうシンプルな話じゃねえよ。金なんてものはあくまで記号で、本当に大事なのは別にあんだからさ。所詮は流動する肩たたき券と変わんねえっつうが、別に1万円札食ってもうまくねえっつうが。ああ、ともかく金で真心は買えねえじゃん。
Money can't buy you time.
じゃねえよ、ざけんなよ。俺は悲しいよ。ついこの間まで4000ポッチの日当に鹿みたいに首かしげていた正直者がくったらねえ皿洗いをしながら、まあ世の中金だよねなんてボソッと言わないでくれっつの。
いや、貨幣制度は素晴らしいと思う。正直物々交換の限界を感じた。それより木の実、ふざけてるとそれ落とすぞ。
えっておお、やべやべ、次割ったら今度こそ俺の頭が割られちまうからな忠告サンキュー。それで相談事？何？もしかして金？
そうなんだ。とりあえずお金は大事で、たくさんあるに越したことはないって痛感した。なんでできればもうちょっと
I
働き
mean,
たい。
that's, I guess, pretty simple, a simple mindset, huh? I want more money, I need to work more.
マジ？マシンみたいに皿洗いをこなしながら夢のないこと言わないでほしいな。世の中金じゃねえって言ったばかりじゃんか。やっぱラブじゃんか。ところで水冷たくないですかね。冬場の皿洗いって割り合わねえことこの上ねえよな。
そりゃ冷たいけど、これぐらいは我慢しないと。山の水は冷たいっていうより痛かったし。
氷水と同じにすんな野生締め。しかしあれだね、呆れた順能力、いや忍耐力っつうの。レジ打ちすらできなかった新人がよ、たった4日でしみったれた飯屋の社畜になっちまうなんて。やっぱ世の中金ってことかね。
The power of
資本主義
capitalism.
ってすげえ。
うるせえぞバカバイト。文句あんならやめちまえ。うちにはごくつぶしにくれてやる小遣いはねえ。
Damn, the complaints and chopsticks flew at them like a storm. This mess of a Chinese restaurant manager was a stubborn man who was willing to let minors work for him and didn't shy from violence, even if it was directed at the son of a lifelong friend. Damn. Soujiro felt that this was what Sparta must have been like. Okay.
ほら怒られた。任されたことはきちんとやらないと。
け優等生。こっちは何かと反抗したい年頃だっつもん。まあいいや、話は変わるんだけどよ。しずき夜に出歩くタイプ？それかチャリンコで出張る趣味？いやまあどっちかでいいんだけど。
バイトの帰りはほとんど夜になるけど、そういう話じゃないんだよな。夜の散歩も遠出も趣味じゃないけど、それが？
いや何さ、しずき引っ越してきたばかりだって言うからよ。俺らが言うのもなんだけど、うちちょい治安が悪いっての？柄が悪いわけじゃねえんだけどな。年間10人くらい通り魔事件っての、そういうの起きてっから。
10 attacks.
通り魔ってなんだ？
Yeah, he wouldn't know that.
そっからかよ。
Yeah, he would not know that.
なんだほら、カバン強盗でもないか。辻斬りってのが近いのか。住宅街とかまだ森が残ってる方によく出やがるんだよ。
Real gnarly.
そういうおかしいのは。なんであんまり夜遅くは出歩くなよな。岬岡の公園とか有名な怪奇スポットだから。通り魔の犯人は口裂け女だったって話知らねえか？
Is some chick with a sliced mouth?
ごめん。まずその口裂け女ってのがわか
Yeah,
ら
it's
ない。
Kuchizake Onna. It's the legend, Japanese legend.
怪談だよ。口が耳まで裂けてるってやつ。今じゃさすがに時代遅れだけどよ。 なんだっけ、深夜の道にな、コート姿の女が待ち伏せていて、私、綺麗とか聞いてくるんだよ。で、綺麗って言っても、いまいちって言っても家まで追っかけられて殺されるの。女の少年はおっかねえっつうか、アメコミの怪人っぽいっつうか。
Something you see in an American comic book. Great.
いや、それ本気で怖くないか？家まで上がってくるのか、その女の人。
Old school is the 80s. He's talking about the 60s.
窓から入ってくるらしいぜ。ガサガサとこうゴキブリみきや。
のクソガキが厨房でその4文字は禁止だってんだろ。殺すぞ。
Damn. The back of Kinomi's head exploded in pain with the impact of his boss's frying pan. Jesus. Soujiro was reminded of just how dangerous this town could be.
殺すってバカじゃねえの。普通そっちの方が禁止用語じゃねえの。ここレストランなんだしさ。いや、あんまうまくねえけど。
木の実、頭大丈夫か？
え？ああ、うん。心配無用。俺なんだか頑丈さには定評があるから。ともかく、そういうわけなんで夜の暗がりは気をつけるぞな、もし。しずき、見るからにかもそうな顔してるし。
ありがとう。ところで、年間10人というのは多い方なのか？
知んねえよ。少なくはないだろうけど、多い方でもないんじゃねえか。ま、うちの通り魔事件が他に比べて厄介なのは。
Oh. He laughed cheerfully. Kiyomi was probably trying to take the edge off of the story, but the noble intention of his laugh was completely lost on Soujiro. His friendly warning was equally futile. Soujiro was simply impressed that Kinomi was able to laugh it off. On the way home, nobody ahead or behind, Soujiro proceeded through the dimly lit street when suddenly... Huh? He turned to face an improbable sound. What the fuck? What? Something stabbed him in the head and fell to the floor. He frowned. A small bird had apparently flown into the telephone phone before landing on his head. Oh. The starling cleaned itself off and flew away. The falling of the bird and its desperate escape thereafter was unlike anything he had experienced in his life up to now. Most of the townsfolk would have seen the incident as unlucky, ominous, or even sinister, but Soujiro just nodded and went about his business. You must understand. What might have been a first for him was utterly an everyday occurrence for these city folks. Okay, sure.
Tattaima! ねえ、アリス帰ってる？教会から帰るとき、商店街でお土産もらっちゃった。伊勢屋のせんべい、一緒に食べない？
Her voice reverberated through the foyer dyed in the colors of the setting sun. It was after 5 in the afternoon when Aoko, still in her school uniform, cheerfully returned home. She had finished her student council duties and attended her monthly meeting with the church.
お帰りなさい。その様子なら何事もなく終わったみたいね。
Her voice, or the voice, was coming from the second floor. Incautious with Aoko and her boundless energy, a considerably calmer girl descended from above.
難癖はつけられたけど滞りなく。うちの問題はうちの問題だから、今回も手は出さないって方向でまとまったわ。それでいいのよね、アリス。
ええ。猫の手なら借りたいけど、あの人たちの手は信用ならないし。いつも通り、後処理だけお願いしましょう。
Interesting.
賛成。後ろからバッサリやられかねないしね。だいたい、私もあんたも背中を気にして没頭できるからじゃないし。
私はできるけど、青子は単に、まだそれほどの余裕がないだけでしょ。
うん。
With the graceful sounds of her steps, Alice entered the foyer. As she did, Aoko's eyes were directed towards the skylight above.
ガラス曇ってるわね。
そのことで話があるわ。今日の課題が終わったらだけど。青子、体の調子は？疲れているなら休みを入れてもいいけど。
何よ気味悪いな。気遣いされることなんてないってば。いつも通りの一日だったし。そんな疲れた顔してる？私。
As school activities went, the days were a breeze. At a glance, her school life might have seemed almost idyllic. Though the more she thought about it, some headache-inducing incidents may have stood out here and there. And with some sincere introspection, Aoko might have recognized the signs of her own mental fatigue, but doing so would have further added to her stress. So just ignore
ストッ
it.
プ。
Yep.
なんで帰ってきてまであんなののことで疲れなくちゃいけないんだ、私。今日の課題って初歩のウィッシュでしょ？問題ないわ。すぐ
Mesmerize
始めましょう。
basics, wish.
今日はなんか勢いでうまくいきそうな気もするし。
Aoko focused on shedding her anger and stress. And headed upstairs with gusto. Okay, so
どうしたの
Aoko...
よ。アリスの部屋でやるんじゃないの？
Yeah, Aoko is learning magic or magecraft from Alice. And this is obviously Alice's house, Alice's family's house. Okay, interesting. The formally dressed Alice nodded in slight dissatisfaction.
それで、伊勢屋のせんべいって今日の？
And she looked at the freshly baked treats Aoko was holding. Okay, cute. In the end, their lesson took place after Alice had her cup of tea. For an apprentice like Aoko, Alice Kongji was the kind of roommate that teacher that was hard to come by. If she insisted that Aoko rest to preserve her health, Aoko had no choice but to comply. The lesson was over after 2 hours, so the two finished the dinner they had prepared and decided on a change of venue for when they would spend the last hours of their day. The sunroom was next to the drawing room in the east wing of the residence and offered a view of the beautiful grounds. It all comes from this, I see. The proud Kongji Estate's luxurious sunroom featured furnishings on par with those in the splendid drawing room. Meanwhile,
来年の夏はジャングルね。この分だと。
the grounds outside had fallen into disrepair, neglected by the owner.
ねえアリス、庭掃除専用のプロイとかいないの？
Aoko took a step into the sunroom and poured some tea.
探せばいるかもしれないけど、少し手間ね。
Playing along with her roommate's joke, Alice made to sit in her chair. Just as she caught sight of the box of chocolates on the table, her lovely eyes narrowed in a frown.
何よ、言っとくけど、今日の失敗は半分アリスのせいよ。おせんべいで気が緩んだのが敗因っていうか、そりゃウィッシュのつもりがガンドになっちゃったのは、我ながら攻撃的すぎると思うけど。
6個減ってるわ。
なんだ、そっちのことか。
Aoko's eyes stared intently at the box of chocolates. You could search the wall and never find a finer selection of chocolates. The brand was Sixpence Songs, apparently.
で、鏡の話をするんだっけ？あれ、今洋館モードから岬モードになってるんでしょ？
ええ。ここの管理はおざなりになるけど、岬市だけに切り替えたわ。
Still in Misaki mode, not mention mode.
それが昨日から曇り出している。
Interesting. The mansion can take care of itself for the time being, so I changed its target to Misaki City. Things have been cloudy there since yesterday. Interesting.
少しずつだけど確実に包囲されてるわね。
Forces arrayed against us grow. Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa,
包囲っ
whoa.
て数が増えたってこと？
捕捉していた1名はもちろん他にもう2名ほど不審者を目撃済み。都市部に1、郊外の森に2ね。
One in the woods.
あんたの目撃談は当てになるからな。で、うるさいのはどっち？
森の方。捕捉中だけどこっちの目に気づいているみたい。なかなか誘いに乗ってこないわ。
そっか。じゃあ今夜仕掛ける？
And to go after it tonight. One simple suggestion that would change the course of her life forever. It is no overstatement to say that this was of all the dice that would decide whether she had the moxie to survive the experience of jumping out of a plane with a torn parachute. Aoko swallowed her hesitation and fear with a little tea. On the school's anniversary night, she declared that she had made up her mind, and from that time on, she would not waver. Alice welcomed her roommate's strength with the barest hint of regret. As someone who shared the same motivations as her, Alice was ultimately reassured by Aoko's resolve, or perhaps more pleased than reassured. All in all, it had taken the better part of a year, but finally Aoko had stepped out of Alice's shadow. The two partners now shared the same fate. Aoko was not the partner Alice had asked for, but a partner nonetheless. Strangers, worlds apart. And even if eventually they would battle each other to the death using all they had inherited, it was only right they did it on equal terms. Interesting. It was, at least for now, a cause for celebration over how far Aoko had come.
せっかくだけど今夜は私一人で十分よ。そんな余裕があるのならあなたはもう少し暗示の練習をするべきね。公演はあなたの担当だからその時は働いてもらうけど。
Alice did not so much as look at Aoko as she explained her reasons. The skill of the enemy she would face that night, her plans for Aoko, for in only 2 days from now, Aoko Aozaki would be reborn.
はいはい、
Interesting,
わ
what
か
the
りま
fuck?
した
Okay. I thought this was like an extra story. This feels like mega main story. Aoko finished her tea and stood up from her seat.
お言葉通り暗示の練習でもやってるわ。一節目は確か軽く弱くうまく早くチクタクチクタク急げや急げよね。
そこは軽く弱くうまく早く急げや急げチクタクチクタクよ。気をつけなさい。それだと逆に落ち着かなくなるわ。
そうだったそうだった。じゃ一つ失礼。
Aoko grabbed a piece of chocolate and popped it into her mouth. She waved before leaving Alice alone in silence. Alice stiffened a moment before slamming the box of chocolate shut, as if it could serve to scold Aoko for snacking. Cute. What the hell? Okay. That was a lot of things. Ooh, whoa, 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 what's this?
Ohayo gozaimasu.
Hi.
午前0時を確認しました。
What the fuck?
前回更新より24時間経過。
What in a demon pillar?
バックアップ開始。レコード送信。 周囲の地形をスキャンします。大気成分、窒素異常なし、酸素異常なし、アルゴン異常なし、二酸化炭素異常なし。第5仮説要素、異常、異常、
Fifth theoretical
異
factor.
常、あり。周囲の時空連続体に齟齬を確認。
Space-time discrepancy. Ah, the classic. You hate when that happens.
第一種危険物との遭遇と断定。視覚領域を主観から客観に変更。
From subjective to objective, that's cool.
自律回路を予備電源に、計測回路を主電源に変更。
Wait.
カ
Okay.
メラを赤外線計測から虚数線計測に変更。では、これより戦闘行為の記述を開始します。主よ、どうか我が身を守りたまえ。
What? Oh, OST. What the hell? Okay. Misaki City was a thickly wooded area. Urban development continued unabated, but Mother Nature still drew breath in its outskirts. Wise old trees had been turned to lumber. The leaves had begun to turn to mulch. Even though the birds who curiously tilted their heads had moved on, the verdure lived on, a testament to its enduring strength. Until the time came that the devouring light of civilization became powerful enough to encroach upon nature's mysterious domain. These woods were no exception. The outlying border between Misaki City and Misaki Hills had been left untouched. Though driven from their nests and dens here, wildlife continued to subsist even today, no longer able to return to the days before man. This was just like any other forest situated next to a town. Winter had arrived in the woods. The chill cut like a razor. The icy air so thick it could reach one's bones. Exposed cheeks stiffened, and wisps of breath formed swirls in the air before disappearing. It was 1 degree above freezing. The cold snap penetrated every nook and cranny of the woods, from the ground to the trees to the wildfire. Wildlife, not like wildfire. The cow jumped over the moon, the little dog laughed. The forest allowed nobody... What? The forest allowed nobody entry during the day. Oh, it allowed nobody entry, okay. During the winter, it lulled the animals to slumber. The still evening air felt like the stagnant breath of the lingering dead. Jesus. The forest consumed the moonlight, obscuring the sight of even the closest of precipices, and hastening the untimely doom of any soul unfortunate enough to become lost within. The only noises to be heard were the whispering of the wind and the murmurings of the stream. The immortal darkness stifled any sense of life. Not the breath of an animal, much less that of a person, was drawn in this place. However, a figure in black, not of this place, skulked within. It cast the tiniest, frailest of silhouettes, like a small boat lost in a sea of fog. Its trepidatious footsteps echoed through the woods. There, exiting the veil of trees, was an unmistakable likeness of a young girl.
To see such cleft under this away with the spoon.
来たぞ来たぞ、いるぞいるぞ。
Wonder who that could be. Yeah.
誰が誰が
誰と誰が
お腹は減ったの
お腹は鳴ったさ。
どっちが食べる
どっちも食
君は左手。
べる。お前は右手。
歓迎しないと。
感激しないと。何しろようやく楽しいお客。
ついでにお腹と脛骨も。
せっかくだからよく噛まないと。
The shadows in the trees laughed ominously. A hallucination, an illusion, or perhaps something real. The shadows frolicked in time to the girl's pace.
さあさあさあさあ。
もっと奥へ、もっと奥へ。
That's a cool outfit.
ところでダイスは
Or
細
whatever.
工済み
お腹の重いローデット。
端っこかじったエッジワーク。
どうでもいいけど肝心要の6の目だけは出さないように。
The girl knitted her eyebrows. She heard voices and felt the presence of things that should not be. Scary enough to frighten this particular girl, as if. Her tightly pursed lips betrayed not a hint of. What? Oh, did I go back somehow? I think I somehow went back. Her tightly pursed lips betrayed not a hint of fear. The girl walked of her own volition. If she had truly felt fear, her legs would be frozen. Deep within the trees, she was perfectly aware of the two humanoid figures stalking her through the still night air.
見たぞ見たぞ。
来るぞ来るぞ。
Do you go back if you like?
見たぞ見たぞ。
Yeah, if you hold on it, you go back. I think.
来るぞ来るぞ。
もう諦めろ。
I don't know. Not really.
もう帰れない。
あんなに教えてあげたのに。
よそに消えないお前が悪い。
Okay. What am I looking at there? The girl halted her steps. The racket from the accompanying voices died in turn. The babbling brook suddenly sounded like a crackling fire. And then... Ah, yes. Across the shallow stream, something appeared that should not exist in the city, much less these woods.
こんばんは。話のわかる人はいる？
The girl addressed them calmly. These men with the Glasgow grins creeped towards her like two slugs.
そう。ただの墓守り。監視だけが仕事なのね。失敗したわ。これなら青子に任せればよかった。ああ。けど。
The one grinning man stood still. The other, shaking violently as if unable to contain himself any longer, turned toward the girl.
青子にはまだ荷が重いわね。そんな姿だけど。あなたたちは一人前の魔術師のようだし。
Ooh. Her black outfit stirred. In her right hand, she held a vitreous cat, darker than the deepest night. What the fuck? The two Glasgow men let out a yelp of caution and incoherent fear. It was at this moment that they finally bared their intent and emotion.
さようなら、お客様。きっと一瞬だろうから。お別れだけ言っておくわ。
The two shuddered at her words. They had no mouths, nor ears or brains to begin with. For creatures like these, words were redundant. All that existed was the present. For these soulless creatures, fears and hopes were nothing more than an unimaginable future. Then, what could be this feeling of foreboding they felt? The spine-chilling miracle that would rip them to pieces not moments from now.
さあ、ごっこ遊びをしましょう。お人形さん。
Her song sounded like a bell echoing through the white woods. The girl's voice vanquished the frost that could grip the trees. Then, what the hell?
いやいや、ずいぶん待たされた。さあ、赤ずきんの登場だ。
Little Red Riding Hood. The curtains opened on a diddle diddle, the banquet of the night. In confusion, one slit-mouthed man swooped towards the girl. In fear, the other fled into the woods behind them. The deformed humanoid darted forth, kicking up water as it rushed the girl. She already knew what this fiend was. The grinning figure had scissors for hands and a demon's heart. He is a wretch who kidnapped children, mercilessly rending them into pieces.
Tweedle.
What's up, Luna?
お任せお任せ。ようやく出番だ。
The piglets bounded and rebounded like paddle balls. The stuffed animals, over 3 feet in length, jumped and weaved their way between the trees. Even with these strange creatures before him, the grinning man did not so much as blink. He raised his arms, but what emerged from his coat sleeves were not the human appendages you would expect. In their place, fiendish cleavers more than 1.5 feet in length. These appendages, which had torn so much of their prey to pieces, sliced clean into the flying pig's skulls. His limbs froze in place. The pigs' bodies were sliced perfectly in half. But then, bisected from head to tail, the pig's innards became alligator jaws and clamped down the grinning man's arms. From fingertips to shoulders, they were swallowed whole. It was all it took to rob the man of control over his entire body. Another shiver of fear. These were not mere pig familiars. Immediately he realized that those were stapler monsters disguised as mere pigs. Stapler
捕まえ
monsters?
たのはダムでした。捕まえたのは D だってば。ああ、でも残念。ご主人様は無口で無情で無関心。結局どっちの手柄も同じこと。
Round the bridge is broken down, broken down, broken down.
Impossible, its presence murmured 3 times. Not possible, not possible, not possible? Talking pigs were one thing. Even having one's arms chopped off was in the realm of occupational hazard. In an instant, the wood was enveloped in a dense wave of magical energy. Though vexing, it was still impressive. None of these facts were particularly extraordinary. These rare familiars, their bizarre attacks, the sheer innate magical energy to overwhelm others. He had experience with all these things. His employer was skilled enough to achieve all of this as well. However,
どうするどうする？いつまで放置？手足一本、瞬きだって贅沢だ。お支払いは面倒でも、できればポンドでお願いします。
in pounds? What were they? Not vessels, not living creatures, not beings possessed by powered by magic circuits. Even though only his arms had been bitten, none of his body would move. It was nothing like being bound or weakened. This felt like he had become words written in a book, fated to keep to their page. Oh, that's cool. As the grinning figure's deformities indicated, he had overcome numerous curiosities and monstrosities, illusions, enthrallment, compulsions, freezings, petrifications, and even petrifications power granted to only the pinnacle of mystic eyes. From poisons to magecrafts, he had weathered a great deal. Oh. But this was something different altogether. The penalty that bound him now was based on different principles from blood, flesh, oxygen, or heat. He was an unknown restraint that followed no rules he knew. Indeed, though it was terrifying to admit, it was as if he had encountered something alien to everything in this world. That's cool.
London Bridge is broken down, broken down, broken down. London Bridge is broken down, my fair lady.
Boom. The fangs sank into his left and right shoulders. For the first time in this form, he felt rage seed up inside them. The basis of all things had to be absolute. All mystics, all things bizarre obeyed some set of laws. But these pigs ignored this, along with his dignity.
さあ3日で衰弱
After 3 days,
6日で溺死半年経てば惨めな骸骨でもご無礼面倒だから今殺そうか
a howl. Though he had no voice, he let out an exasperated scream.
うげなんて便利自分の腕を外せる機構
Oh!
三国一のものの不
The talkative pigs fell into the stream. That exasperated scream was the sound of the figure tearing his arms from their sockets. Armless, he rushed the girl.
役立たず。後でお仕置きが必要ね。
Uh-oh. He may have lost his mangled arms, but not the object of his malice. A mystic eye to pierce the heart of its victim. A magic circuit designed to stop a beating heart. It was beautiful in its simplicity. At point-blank range, it was the equivalent of an unavoidable shotgun blast. Oh shit. And she just blocks it. But, tragically, that eye was all he had.
Build up with wood and clay, wood and clay, wood and clay. Build up with wood and clay, my fair lady.
He failed to realize that her song had changed. Oh my god, what the fuck? She just dropped... Yeah, a fucking tree on him. For the giant, the earth-shattering strike was akin to the act of shooing away an insect. Its green, verdant veins pulsed. Oak and bark covered its body, hardened sufficiently over centuries to repel even a chainsaw. On its forehead, inscribed in all manners of colors, was the word Emmer. Though judging from its misspelling, the inscription was purely decorative. The Thomas Stroll. It also went by the moniker Falling Down, or alternatively, the Great Bridge. Admired in different forms, it was the first of 4 miracles.
テムズ、もう一体お願い。
The giant responded to those words. With roots ran deep into the earth, it raised its left arm to the heavens without moving a step. Elsewhere in the forest, the grinning figure who had chosen to flee the battle was running through the night forest at full speed. A record and provide a detailed description of the enemy. Those are the orders assigned to him. He poured all of his energy into escaping this forest with which he had become so familiar. In case of emergency, the plan was for one to challenge the enemy while the other made a tactical retreat in order to report to their master. He dashed through the forest. Though gripped by fear, he was confident in his ability to perform the mission he was assigned for. Nothing could catch him in these woods. Even the wolves could not track him. His bird-like legs thumped as they kicked the ground. Perhaps it was his creator's eccentric taste that dictated their form when optimizing them for running. The grinning man could reach a maximum speed of 45 miles per hour, well past the limit of any bipedal creature. After securing a distance of several miles, he turned around to confirm his safety. There was no sign of pursuit. His crescent-shaped mouth, nay, eye, slacked in relief. And then, after facing forward once more, he looked up to lock eyes with his doom.
London Bridge is broken down, broken down, broken down.
Oh 07. In the distance, he could hear the dark cries of Mother Goose. Countless vines extended it from the ground. They formed into a monstrosity that conjured up images of an arched bridge, something resembling a giant arm.
London Bridge is broken down, my fair lady.
Oh, she finished the chant. You're dead. Oh my god.
最終報告。生還は困難。解析は困難。転送は困難。状況を終了します。はあ。主よ、どうかこの身を守り。
God damn.
済んだよね。お疲れ様。戻ってテムズ。次
You
は
can
もっ
return
と
now, like a
高価な
Pokemon.
場所ならいいのだけど。
The girl turned on her heel. The invaders who had set up shop in the woods were eliminated. She had no interest in whether they had been good or evil, nor how many victims they had claimed. The shackles of civic society held no sway over her. This was the way of a pure-blooded witch, the way of a mainster. Mainster? A pure-blooded witch.
僕たちは？ねえ、
Interesting.
僕たちは？
A pure-blooded witch, huh?
噛んだままだと僕らも動けないっていうかさ。ひどい、飛べない豚に用はないと。次はお役に立ちます、きっと。生まれてこの方、失敗続きの僕らだけど。壊れるまでに一度くらいは褒められたいね。
I know witches aren't the same, yeah. I remember his backstory. Barrel's backstory. Yeah. The girl let out a sigh and stepped into the stream. She removed her gloves and dipped her slender fingers into the ice water.
6の目は出すなって言うけど。6の目しか出ないようになってるわよね。あら。
Oh, sorry. There was no response to her melancholy tone. In place of once boistering pigs were two black dice, now sitting in the palm of her hand. As the girl was about to say something to the scattered remains around her, she realized something that made her put a hand to her mouth.
お別れは済ませていたわね。目ぐらいは聞いておくべきだったかしら。
Yeah? Her slender, pale fingers traced her lips, as if reluctant to part from them. Sighing again, she calmly left the dark woods the same way she had entered. Well, that was fucking crazy. What the fuck? Okay, that was a lot of new stuff there. I'm sure they're gonna elaborate more on all the things. I know we heard a lot about a bunch of things in Barrel's backstory, but we haven't really elaborated on them there, so I'm sure they're gonna elaborate more on them here, which is gonna be cool. I'm excited for the lore on everything that they're showing us here, because I feel like if you just watch this without, like, let's say knowing any, like, not playing FGO and stuff, there's a lot of things that they just throw at you here, and even with knowing FGO, they just throw a lot of things at you that you have no idea what they mean, so I'm sure they're going to expand on them as we play. Let us rewind to a moment in the recent past. The scene took place on a Saturday morning in early December. With third period over just before lunch, the only activity that remained before the scholastic day ended was homeroom. Two of Class C students, Soujiro Shizuki and Hosuke Kinomi, were standing outside on the balcony overlooking the schoolyard. They were stuck waiting for their homeroom teacher, Mr. Kazuki Yamashiro, and could not leave until he arrived. The rest of their classmates were chatting idly in the classroom. Class A's Tobimaru Tsukiji was killing time alongside them. The listless trio discussed their weekend plans as they leaned on the veranda's railing.
木の実はベアでアルバイトか？
ばっか、誰が日曜まで働くかってよな。明日はほら B 組の子たちと遊びに行く予定だったんだけどな。
Oh, they stood you up.
なんかうちから出られね
え。ん？それはつまりまた振られたのか？
Yeah, they stood you up.
うわ、直撃！言いづらいことをまっすぐ言うよね、しずきくんってば。そりゃ毎日てめえのバカ面見てればひよこだって振られるって言葉を覚えるだろうよ。
その字
自滅するのは勝手だけどな。くれぐれもその字に変な遊び教えんなよ。はあ？そりゃ殿下の方じゃねえの。
that guy. He's in school.
気ぃつけろよ、しずき。築地はマジで腹黒いからよ。こいつの頭の中はほら、あれ、ゴミ捨て場の張り紙？あんな感じだから、くっきり使えるもんと使えないもん分けてんだよ。
ああ、それは知ってる。ところで唐突に思ったんだが、飛び丸の中じゃ木の実はどういう扱いなんだ？
What?
そうだな。粗大ゴミ回収は金でももらわねえと割り合わなくなるんじゃねえか。国が無料で回収するのはそろそろおしまいってとこ。
Oh, was this a time when collecting like big pieces of garbage became something you have to pay for in Japan? Because I know that's like a big thing that you have to pay for. Like if you have anything like oversized, and kind of oversized garbage, you need to pay for it to get this to dispose of it.
はあ？何言ってんのお前。使い古しのタンスとか高く売れるじゃん。
Yo, what's up, Sunso man? Yup, we are on 1.5. Chapter 1.5.
俺みたいな開封即使用みたいな男がこれからのトレンドなわけでしょ。
How rad.
ほら、コンビニで売ってる使い捨てカメラとか大人気だし、ようやく流行が俺の消費文明に追いついたと。
じゃあ木の実はバイトと。飛び丸は？
来るからね、ちゃんと俺の時代。俺はちょい仕様だ。親父の客が来てるんで接待しなきゃならん。街の案内をしてくれと。聞けよ、人の話聞けよ。あのよ、俺は妹の相手してやるだけなんだよ。隣のクソ中華飯店の手伝いなんかしねえよ。
Aw.
その字は明日もバイトか？
Where does the name Sonoji even come from? Soujiro.
いや、それが1日空いてる。今日はこれから遊園地でアルバイトだけど。
そうです。
それって魔のきついランド？タフだね、しずき。あそこのバイトは柔道部の連中でも値を上げるって話じゃんか。
なんと、まさか猫黒の荷物運びより辛い。
X-Fed. It's like a play on the spelling of his name. Okay. X-Fed.
いや、そこまではよく。しかし、山城の野郎おっせえな。見ろ。隣の B 組すらお帰りになられてるぞ。
だな。仕方ね。面倒だが呼んでくるか。その字を遅刻させるわけにはいかねえし。
Okay, this seemed cool. We're friends. And as if by design, the moment Tobimaru Tsukiji stood up warily from the balcony railing, the school's PA system chime rang.
2年 C 組の静木宗十郎くん、山城先生がお呼びです。至急職員室まで来てください。繰り返します。2年 C 組の
An awkward silence fell upon the three. After a long 5 seconds, Soujiro said goodbye and headed back inside.
面白いことねえな。誰か校庭にミステリーサークルとか作ってくんねえかな。
Hinumi grumbled, slouching his shoulders and succumbing to his lethargy.
他人の妄想力に期待すんなよ。刺激が欲しいならてめえでイベントを起こせ。ほら、クラス分け発表の時よろしく。青崎に突っかかればすぐだぜ。
I like this guy. This guy has good vibes.
蘇るトラウマ。やだよ。会長の大立ち回りは面白いのを通り越して恐ろしいよ。善良な一男子生徒としちゃ美少女が転校してくるだけでいいんだよ。
A hot transfer student showing up, huh?
まあ普通の子じゃつまんないからハリウッドのプロデューサーとかイギリスの歌姫とか。
どんなくくりだそりゃ。そこは火星のお姫様あたりにしとけよ。
Yo, what's up, dogs?
それと2年 C 組の皆さんへ山城先生から伝言です。山城先生は訳あってホームルームを欠席しますので、各自勝手に下校しちゃってくださいね。それではでは。以上、放送室からお知らせしました。
どうよこれ。山城新車買ってからフリーダムすぎね。このままではあの真新しいセルビアに俺のギザ銃がうなりかねん。
鍵穴にガム程度にしとけ。教師の発給はマジ同情に値するからな。
He's really cool. Tobimaru. The two frenemies returned to the classroom, complaining all the while. Their concern for their mutual friends summoned to the faculty room, completely out of mind.
納得いきません。生徒のアルバイトは認められています。学校公認の職場であるなら社会経験の一環として推奨すると校則にもありますが。
Oh, she's fighting a battle for Sonoji.
そうなんだけどね。彼の場合、やりすぎなのが問題なわけで、仮にもし認可していない労働基準法に反してそうなところで働いてたら困るでしょ。うちも彼も。
The volatile tension between the ruthless student council president and the easygoing modern language teacher permeated the room. Praying to be spared from the impending confrontation, the other teachers hurriedly relocated to the meeting room. By the time Mr. Yamashiro noticed this, the only other person in the room was the student council president, Aoko Aozaki.
逃げたか。ひどいな、みんな。怖いのは僕に押し付けてばっ。
Oh, sorry about that.
話の続きです、先生。 仮に彼が指定以外のアルバイトをしているとしたら、それは彼の要求に学校側が応えていないからではありませんか？
Yeah, I mean, if he needs more money, then he needs to work more, you know? If he doesn't work more, he doesn't get enough money.
下宿先の家賃を奨学金で賄えとは言いませんが、時間の許す限り働きたいという要望は考慮すべきです。指定外のアルバイトを疑うのなら、まず働き先は1生徒につき1件だけという規則を改めてください。
After hearing her out and realizing there was no way she would back down, Mr. Yamashiro hung his head. Won the debate, baby. This was supposed to be easy. The plan was to call in the student rumored to be working multiple jobs, confirm whether the rumor was true, and if so, give him a warning and some guidance, and then head to lunch with the knowledge that all was right with the world. The student council president, who was coincidentally in the faculty room at the time, had heard the entire issue and decided to call out this injustice. As far as Mr. Yamashiro was concerned, she was in the right, and he was well aware of the aforementioned student's situation. Personally, he would have liked to help, but among the faculty, he was just the new kid on the block. He wanted to stay in the vice principal's good side, and at the very least not lose his job, as badly paid as it was.
こればかりはね、副教頭先生直々の注意なんで、僕も助けてあげられないんだよ。
それでしたら落としどころがあればいいんですね。
ん？
The student council president removed the document from her bag. It was a document that had been brought up in the morning's faculty meeting, bringing a host of headaches with it.
青崎くん、それは。
はい、間協会のボランティア参加の申告書です。
Wait, did it say middle age? There's no way he did it, right? Oh, I don't know. Nah, okay. It's chat calling him that. Okay, I see. Oh, middle-aged man, I see. Middle age is crazy for a 25-year-old or whatever he is. I think it's 25, right? That's crazy work. Middle age.
今月も希望者ゼロですね。敬虔なクリスチャンである副教頭先生はさぞお気を悪くしているかと。我が校の生徒には新人が足りんと今朝も嘆かれていたとか？
そうだけど、どうして君が今朝の職員会議の内容を知っているか聞きたいよ、本当。
Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, but his eyes were smiling gleefully. He had figured out the student council president's objective.
魚心あれば水心ありですか。
Yep.
教会への奉仕活動はボランティアだけど、きちんと謝礼が出る。あれも形の上では学校側が推奨する社会見学だからね。副教頭先生は参加者が出たことに喜び、加えて
その参加希望者がすでに他のアルバイトについていた場合、学校側の認可が2つになっちゃいますね。前例にしてはいい落としどころだと思いますが。
Mr. Yamashiro raised his hands in surrender. There were a few students able to both raise a complaint and propose a proper solution. Perhaps it was her big sisterly disposition that made this girl so simultaneously feared yet trusted.
よし、その方向で攻めてみよう。うまくいくよう祈ってくれよ。
他力本願は嫌いです。悪巧みに乗ってくれるのならきちんと活躍してください、山城先生。
With a bow, the student council president turned to leave the faculty room.
ああ、待った待った。君も残るんだ。
Not sexually involved.
今からしずきくんを呼ぶから、ちゃんと面倒見てもらわないと。
は？
The girl's cool eyes narrowed. Unable to process what she just heard, her expression turned to a scowl.
いや、参加希望者は1人より2人の方がいいだろ。
Oh shit.
青崎くんがフォローしてくれるなら僕も安心だしね。
ちょっと先生。
ああ、放送室2年 C 組の静木宗十郎くん、至急職員室に来てください。で、放送お願いします。
だから先生。
Damn.
いやー、これで万全だ。まさか頭痛の種が同時に消え去るなんて今日はついてる。ああ、けど青崎くん、ずいぶん親身になってくれるんだね。何？もしかしてああいうのがタイプ？
Oh.
あ、放送室さん、ついでに生徒会長が心からお待ちしていますと付け足してー。
って山城。
She punched him. Crazy work to punch a teacher. The next day, a pleasant Sunday. Soujiro was awake 2 hours before the time he was supposed to meet her. Dead? Yeah. After getting up, he decided to go for a leisurely jog to clear his mind. But, lost among his own thoughts, his 30-minute jog turned into almost an hour. Upon realizing, he rushed home. After thoroughly racking his brain over what to wear for the occasion, he decided upon wearing his school uniform.
午前10時、三崎中央公園の東入り口で待ち合わせ。
Yesterday in the faculty room, when Aoko Aozaki had shared the time and place with him that day, she said with such pain on her face. Maybe she was fighting a headache at the time.
しかし、
Oh, shit. Soujiro muttered, his words of concern misguided as they were. In any case, he waited for about 5 minutes. At precisely 10 o'clock, the student council president appeared.
おはよう。いつものことだけど、時間だけはぴったりよね。ひどい顔ね。もしかして気分悪いの？
いや、体調はいいと思う。
He waved off her concern.
だがしかし、青崎は制服だった。
ええ、学校の行事だもの。当然でしょ。
Straight arrow. A heavy weight of despondency fell upon Soujiro's shoulders. The angsting over his outfit for the previous 2 hours had been rendered meaningless just like that. The duo, clad in their school uniforms on a day off, walked by the train station. In the beginning, Aoko had made efforts to give Soujiro a thorough lay of the land, but today she only shared the bare minimum of explanations. Yeah, he doesn't get the casual clothes experience until later down the line, you know? You need to work for it, my man. This is not a first kind of meeting type of deal, you know? This is partially because, surprisingly, Soujiro had become well accustomed to the town. Which restaurants were good, which shortcuts to use in a rush, and why the nearby bicycle shop was better than the department store by the station if you wanted to buy a bicycle. Things a local would know. And why the nearby bicycle shop was better than the department if you wanted to buy Sure. But the other reason was that it had dawned on Aoko how the two of them conversing might look to passerby.
話は変わるけど、具体的にどんな労働内容なのか、そろそろ聞いていいかな。
From here on, volunteering at the church meant that the school would tolerate his multiple jobs. Soujiro had quickly agreed to the tempting offer, nodding like a bobblehead. But, as was typical of him, he had failed to consider the content of the proposal.
まあ、そんなことだろうと覚悟はしてたけど。あなた、間教会は初めて？
教会なら2回目だ。珍しい建物なんで近寄ったら、中の人がタダでお菓子をくれたんだけど。
Man, this is just chapter 1. I'm so excited for the Mahoyo collab already. This is gonna be so good. He pondered with all sincerity how exactly a church worked. His contemplative contemplative posture made him appear the part of the philosopher, but after all his thinking, he concluded, I guess I'll start taking your money on your second visit. Such was the extent of Soujiro's concerns.
普通そういうことは子供にしかしないんだけどね、あの教会は。
Aoko sided the lost little lamb.
で、どんな人に会ったの？神父？それともシスター？
それは綺麗な女の人だった。
In the church?
じゃあユイカさんの方ね。今日会ったらお礼をって必要ないか。あんたのことだからそのあたりはきちっとしてるだろうし。仕事の話なら簡単よ。学校でやってることと変わらないから。あの教会、規模の割に人数が少ないのよ。
Aoko picked up her pace as they headed for the church. Somehow, she seemed like a general invading enemy territory. It made Soujiro furrow his brows in discomfort. Ida Church had a long history. Apart from the station, it was a white-painted sanctuary nestled between the business and residential districts. As far as Aoko could remember, the church as she knew it now was the result of remodeling done 8 years prior. It was practically a cathedral for a town of this size. Incidentally, located next to it was the Misaki City General Hospital. From Aoko's perspective, it seemed awfully suspicious for the church to take up residence next to the location of the city where the most lives were lost, though the only two who were aware of this opinion were her roommate, Alice Kongji, and the priest. I guess. Okay.
青崎はこの教会に縁があるのか？
私はこれっぽっちも。もう過去に戻って改ざんしたいぐらい微塵もないけど。うちの父と祖父は長い付き合い。
Interesting.
ここの手伝いなんて、忌々しいことに小学生の頃は毎日してたもんだけど。
The more Aoko spoke, the more twisted her expression became. Recalling this made her want to grab it by the proverbial collar, give it the proverbial one-armed judo back throw, smash its proverbial head into the proverbial ground, and kick the proverbial living daylight out of its defenseless proverbial torso. Of course. Such was her so-called trauma that if it were anthropomorphized, it would take more than a 5-round beating to satisfy her thirst for vengeance.
Oh.
It was in this moment, as he became aware of Aoko's mood, that Soujiro began to fear for his safety. Fair. Perhaps attracted by the noisy murder of crows outside the church, a woman in a nun's habit emerged from the front entrance.
失礼ですが、どちらのお客様でしょう？当教会は暴力団関係の方はご遠慮いただいておりますので、日を改める、あるいは生き方を悔い改めた後、社会的な罪を償ってから門をくぐっていただきたいのですが。
青崎青子です。シスターユイカ。
まあ、青子さんでしたか。驚きました。昼間のうちにあなたが来るのは久しぶりです。
そうですね。いつもは夜に呼ばれて神父様とだけお話をしていますから、ユイカさんとは。まあ意外ですね。1年近くまともにお話をしていません。ま、この先だって一度もないでしょうけど。
She's so honest, so blunt.
あなたも随分と立派になられたようで、がっかりです。何より今の気配は清らかな少女とは思えないほど悪辣でした。
Menacing. On the surface, the two exchanged congenial greetings. Unable to read between the lines, all Soujiro could see were two good friends.
今月のボランティアは私とそこの彼です。親愛なる間教会のためですから。 10時から3時まで1分の狂いもなく
10 to 3 not a
きっ
minute
かり
more.
働かせ
Hell
てい
yeah.
ただきますわ。
まあ世も末ですが歓迎しますね。
As you know, we're reaching the end times, but your spirit of service is welcome. Oh, are they closing up?
神の家は万人に等しく開くもの。この際あなたの内面は見なかったことにしておきましょう。
The nun flashed a smile that was equal parts elegant and cruel. Keeping up appearances aside, she seemed overjoyed to have able hands to put it to work. The sister introduced herself as Yuka Suse and thanked Soujiro, who had volunteered of his own volition. Soujiro noticed that her eyes were always shut, but not wanting to be rude, especially in front of Aoko, he decided not to pry.
しずきさんとおっしゃるのですね。声のイメージ通り落ち着いたお名前です。
はあ、それはどうも。
失礼。名字で呼ばれるのはお嫌いのようですね。宗十郎さんでよろしいですか？
いや、どっちでもいいですけど。
ではそのように。ほんと難儀なことですね。
Though the sister's tone was gentle, her words seemed somewhat indifferent. She lacked sight, but she guided the two with certainty in her step.
それで奉仕の内容ですが。
分かってます。クリスマス前だし面倒な掃除を済ませておきたいんでしょ。問題ありません。そういうの得意ですから。
It wasn't their strong suit as much as it was Soujiro's. I see.
では青子さんはかまどの方で聖兵の作り置きを、しずきさんは外に私どもでは手の届かない箇所の清掃をお願いします。
ちょっと待って、台所にリツカのやついないでしょうね。
リツカ？
こんなところであんなのに会うなんてごめんだから。
Different Ritsuka, different one.
リツカは留守です。ですのでどうぞ気兼ねなく。
With a dismissive wave, Aoko headed toward the door in the back of the worship hall. As she had indicated, she was quite accustomed to this church.
しずきさんはこちらに。まずは物置から清掃道具を運んでいただきます。
Yeah, that's gonna be the event story. It's gonna be the same story, but Ritsuka's gonna be actually Fujimaru. The work entrusted to Soujiro did not require any particular skill. It was window cleaning at its most standard.
窓を全部拭けばいいんですね。
水拭きと空拭き、その後にコートスプレーもお願いします。はしごの高さは足りますか？
あれ、ちょっと足りないっぽいですね。
では届く範囲で結構ですので、よろしくお願いします。
After the brief exchange, the sister returned to the church. Soujiro began to wonder if it was out of distrust in him that she was being so curt. He understood that it was too soon to glean an answer from their first meeting, but then again, such answers always eluded Soujiro. Left alone, but no less encouraged, Soujiro began cleaning the windows. The day's weather was a disappointment once again. It had not gone so far as to rain, but was too overcast to enjoy the sun. He leaned against the tall ladder and, beginning with a window about 5 yards from the ground, quietly cleaned. Soujiro was never the kind of person to mind physical labor. In fact, if there had been a blue sky, this might have been a perfect day offered to him. By the time he finished his third or fourth window, he felt very relaxed and began to whistle. Though 15 feet was an intimidating height, it provided a wonderful view at the same time. Turning toward the town gave Soujiro a clear view of the treetop hill that had previously caught his eye.
やっぱり林の中に家があるような。
Yep. The hill in the woods just outside the town. From here, the forest overlooking the sleepless city looked like a foreign castle.
あれ何泥棒さん
Just then, lost in his thoughts while wiping windows, Soujiro was pulled out of his trance by someone pacing below him. He looked down and saw a girl, her unkempt clothes otherwise contrasting with her kind visage.
でもちょっと怪盗には似合わないのんびり屋さんっぽい。どっちかっていうとあれかしら。暖炉から現れては微妙にいらないおもちゃを押し付けるセイントみたいな。うわー、私あのヒゲ苦手なのよね。だってどう見ても不法侵入者じゃないあの人。
Santa? Oh, hello. She looked to be in her late 20s. Oh, hello. Despite the cold, she was not wearing a coat. She no purse either, which was rather strange as a woman and her purse were never far apart. Not that Soujiro knew this truth quite yet. Based on the fact that none of this seemed to apply to her, one could have easily surmised that she was herself a little loosey-goosey. A few cards short of a full deck, one might also say. That's a crazy way to describe someone. A few cards short of a full deck.
あ、私ピンときたわ。君、ミサコのバイトの子？偉いわ。今時の高校生は業者さん顔負けなのね。
And the girl looked up in admiration to Soujiro as he stood atop his ladder.
よーし、私も手伝っちゃおうかな。はしごはまだある？他の雑巾は？どうせだからホースで水をかけるのはどうかしら。こうバーッと。
Okay, she seems cool.
とか叫びながら。
Yo, she's
罰
chill
当た
as
りだけど、
fuck.
それなら少しぐらいは楽しくなりそうじゃない？
The girl let out a hearty laugh. Her smile glowed like a cactus that had sprouted... What? Her smile glowed like a cactus that had sprouted legs and began to run about. What does that even mean? Sure. Inasmuch as a running cactus could only cause trouble. As Soujiro anticipated, the girl began to clean without waiting for his approval.
いえ、教会の前を通ったら人影っぽいのが窓にへばりついてるのが見えちゃったの。昼間から泥棒とか豪快だなーってちょっと興味惹かれちゃって。
Don't worry about it.
そしたら可愛い子が真面目に労働してたわけ。窓拭きの達人みたいにビッとかっこよく。そんなの見せられたら手伝いたくなるのが人情じゃない？
Wiping the window next to Soujiro, the girl continued to chatter cheerfully. Although this was all kinds of suspicious, Soujiro politely followed their lead, nodding and agreeing as she spoke. Perhaps it was an instinctive camaraderie. He sensed this girl was just like him, always getting the short end of the stick when it came to menial work.
あなたは教会の人なんですか？
私？いえ、ただの通りすがりよ。それよりあなたってのは他人行儀ね。君とは商店街で何度も会ってるのに。
いや、会ってませんよ。
会ってます。君、魚達さんでバイトしてる子でしょ？今週だけでも何度か行ってるもん、私。私はそうね、花沢って言うんだけど。
Hanazawa?
君の名前は？
Hanazawa! Okay. You're not gonna believe this, Hanazawa, but you gotta meet Alice. Hanazawa took a quick glance at the flower bed below in the middle of her introduction, then gave him a friendly laugh. Soujiro's self-introduction, however, was his usual brand of awkward.
宗十郎さん。いい名前ね、古風な感じで。名前に数字が入ってるとなんか日本人って感じがしない？
ここの神父さんとかシスターの名前知ってる？エイリとかユイカとか、なんか外国風なんだけど。
エイリさんはともかく、ユイカさんは綺麗な黒髪の女の人でしたよ。
あら、神父さんにはまだ会っていないのね。愛田教会の美形神父と美人姉妹って言ったら有名なんだけど。
Okay.
あ、そうか。さては君、最近引っ越してきたんでしょう。しかも一人暮らしと見たわ。
そうですけど、花沢さんすごいですね。さっきからあまりにも的確な当てずっぽうです。
いえいえ、推理と言ってくれたまえ。君ぐらいの子がアルバイトに精を出すほど、この町の娯楽は魅力的じゃないもの。遊ぶお金ならバイト一件で賄えちゃうわ。君は物欲のあるタイプじゃなさそうだし。となると、これはもう生活費のためと考えるのが健全でしょ。まあ学生さんが生活費も学費も自分だけで賄うなんてのは健全じゃないんだけど。
Exactly.
いや、そうでもないですよ。働かざる者食うべからずです。
Never trust the shimpu. True.
そっか。宗十郎さんは若いのに立派ね。私も学生の頃はバイト三昧だったから、少しは君の大変さもわかるわよ。
なんと、花沢さんも一人暮らしだったんですか？
ええ。親の反対を押し切ってよその国に留学しちゃったの。あっちには友達もいたから下宿先には困らなかったけど、さすがに食費ぐらいは稼がないとね。けどまあ、こう見えて肉体労働は苦にならないタイプだし、学院もバイトも楽しい思い出になってるわ。
Oh, Soujiro nodded agreeably. Dignified or not, he could barely hold back the sense of solidarity that was welling up within him.
これも何かの縁だし、魚達さんではこれからお世話になりそうだし、頼りないだろうけど、相談事があったらぜひ言ってね。精神面で力になるわ。
Yo, she's
ありがとう
hella
ござい
chill.
ます。じゃあ早速ですけど、ここは何をするところなんでしょう
And Soujiro said here, he pointed at the church. He doesn't. Okay. That's not the concept of a church. Even Hanazawa was taken aback by his question. Unaware of Soujiro's provincial background, combined with her quick-witted nature, Hanazawa seemingly mistook his question for some kind of sophisticated wit.
そうね。
What? What?
心の安全を扱っているというのはどうかしら。いえ、安全というよりは鎧？継ぎはぎのバリケード？とにかく本人はちっとも鍛えられないってことは同じよね。
A way for people to avoid getting better.
あとはパンとワインも分けてくれるわね。
無料でですか？
もちろん。止めるものは勝手に置いていくって話。あとは、そっか、これが一番大きいんだけど、収入に税金がかからない。心の安全は扱いが難しいけど、きちんと売り物にできれば、ノーリスクハイリターンよ。
No risk, high return. That's crazy.
はあ、よくわからないですけど、ピンチの時はここに転がり込めばいいんですね。
Their
それ
stupidity
は
is
おすすめしない
multiplying.
な。
They're feeding off of each other.
ご利用は月に1回、気休め程度にした方がいいと思う。
Their eggs squeaked as the two carefree souls continued to wipe down the windows. Whistling as they went, they shined up one window, then another, then another.
そうだ、もう一つあります。ここから見えるあの森、何ですか？
森？あの山の上にある森のこと？
ですけど、あれは山じゃなくて丘というべきです。
As someone raised in the countryside, Soujiro's pride would not allow for a mound of dirt to be called a mountain. Sure.
そう？あれはあれで
結構登るのに体力使うんだけど、ま、そっちの方がよりらしいわね。
Nudge, it's a hill. It was as if a shadow fell over her till now sunny disposition. She was undoubtedly a beautiful woman with very lovely features, but as Soujiro looked at her in that moment, her smile melted away, and he saw how disturbed she was at his comment. that bothered her that much? And when it comes down to it,
あれは丘です。それとほら、ここから煙突みたいなの見えますけど、あれは何ですか？
Soujiro was not one to closely watch people's reactions and fuss over his speech.
あれは本物の煙突よ。あの森は全部私有地なんだけど、その中にでっかい洋館が建っているの。でも私有地だから地元の人間も入ったことはないんじゃないかしら。通称クオンジのお化け屋敷ってね。近所の皆さんは気味悪がってるし、あんまり近寄らない方がいいんじゃない？あんな小さな森なのに遭難したとか野犬が出るとか物騒な話には事欠かないから。
野犬って都会にも野犬
たくさんいるわよ。この教会の裏手の空き地にだっているし、ここの神父さんは物好きだからパンとかあげちゃって、それでワンちゃんの巡回ルートになっちゃってるんでしょうけど。とにかく君子危うきに近寄らずよ。あの森には入らないのが町のルールなの。そもそも私有地だし、入ったらおまわりさんを呼ばれちゃって、そのまま交番でお説教タイムなんてあんまり楽しくないでしょ。
Soujiro nodded along to her story as he stared at the far-off chimney from his vantage point on the ladder. A teeny tiny part of him was curious about that hill because it reminded him of the woods where he grew up, but after reminding himself that it was none of his business, he returned to the window washing. Thanks to Hanazawa lending a hand, they were able to finish the job without a hitch. Between the two of them, they had accomplished a simple but very time-consuming task.
はい、ご苦労様でした。
Damn, she's the goat, man.
あれだけ砂まみれだった窓が見違えたわね。どう？これから適当な査定でお茶にしない？宗十郎さんの仕事っぷりに敬意を表して、私がおご。
はい。何か言いました？花沢さん。
いや、ごめんなさい。休養を思い出しちゃった。
Never mind.
花沢さんはここで失礼するのでした。チャオ。
Ciao! By the time Soujiro, who had started putting away the ladder, turned around, he was only able to catch a glimpse of the girl's figure dashing towards the street at lightning speed. She saw the cops. She was like, uh-oh, he's 17. I need to run. It was just before 3 o'clock. More than 3 hours had passed since Hanazawa offered to help. Soujiro watched the girl with many strange faces disappear. For someone who seemed to have been on an aimless walk, Hanazawa had spent a good deal of time with him. Maybe helping Soujiro out reminded her of something she needed to do.
しずきくん、そっちにいるの？
The soon council president popped her head out from the corner of the church.
あ、声かけてごめん。いいから作業に専念。
The sight of Soujiro putting away a ladder taller than himself seems to have provoked an emotional response in Aoko. Then in an instant, she rolled up her sleeves and began to approach him.
Oh.
This surprised him more than Aoko's sudden appearance. Ignoring Soujiro's bewilderment, Aoko promptly began issuing orders.
はしご、横に倒していいわよ。下の方は私が持つから、あなたは上の方をお願い。
She did all of this so matter-of-factly that Soujiro began lowering the ladder before he even had a chance to insist that he could do it himself. Interesting. I wonder if Hanazawa saw that Aoko was approaching and that's why she left. Maybe they have a history together. With work finished and the sister's thank you gifts in hand, the two put the church behind them. Since Aoko apparently had something to do around the station, they decided they would walk together until they got there.
でも、本当にアルバイト慣れしてるのね。
beneath the orange tinted tinged sky. Aoko spoke more as though she was expressing her thoughts out loud and striking up a conversation.
そうか。青崎から見てそうなら少しは嬉しいな。
Yeah, she left the stove on, maybe. Soujiro gave her an earnest smile. But then again, he had been beaming ever since he received his pay, so the source of his joy was not so clear.
あのね、あなたは普段が問題ばっかりなんだから、あんまり調子に乗らないように。差し引きゼロっていうか、まだまだマイナスなんだから。
うん。学校のことは言われると悲しくなる。
Soujiro hung his head dejectedly. Even if his job had been going well, school was still a bust. Exams were one thing, but even classwork was something he had found himself falling behind in.
青崎は成績悪いやつは嫌いか？
Why do you hate...
まあ、頭というか巡りの悪い人との話は疲れるでしょうね。でも、あなたはそれ以前だし、そもそも私にはこれっぽっちも関係ないし。でっかいハンデを何とかするのは先生たちの仕事で、それに応えるのはあなたの役目。アルバイトもいいけど、帰ったらきちんと予習やっときなさいよ。
それはもちろん。学校の人たちはみんないい人だ。
そうならいいけど、みんないい人？
Aoko cocked her head to one side, unsure how this exchange had resulted in that response. She decided to interpret it as Soujiro simply expressing his gratitude in his own peculiar way.
ところで、参考までに聞くんだけど、あなた他にどんなバイトしてるの？
どこって商店街が多い。魚のお店とか花の店とか。あ、でも昨日は隣町まで遠出したな。遊園地のアルバイト。
Damn. Since the only school authorized locations were in the Misaki shopping districts, his response was much as she expected. That is, except for the decidedly unexpected last part.
遊園地ってヤシロギの？
そう。使わなくなった看板とかオブジェとか解体して運び出したんだ。さすがに疲れたな、あれは。
へえ、うん、それは体力勝負でしょうね。
This left Aoko rather impressed. Transporting unused amusement park machinery was not a job that students did willingly in their free time.
でもいいな。私、キッチーランドって一度も行ったことないの。三崎町に住んでるのに。
Oh, you can see it here. Aoko looked up in the direction of the neighboring town. From here, you could just barely make out the Ferris wheel. The round steel frame of the wheel, illuminated by the sunset as it was reminiscent of an old gravestone.
そうか。それは金銭的な理由で。
She knew it would be rude to Soujiro to burst out laughing, but the remark tickled her funny bone. Oh, that's nice. She.
そういうんじゃなくて。
Oh, that was well. Wait, that was a really well done line.
そういうんじゃなくて。
Oh, that was nice of her. She's trying not to offend them by laughing there.
単純にあれが開園してから立て込んでて遊びに行く暇がなかっただけよ。お金で解決する問題だったらそれこそ今すぐに言ってるわ。
Aoko showed Soujiro the envelope that contained the pay from the church. There was nothing sinister about her remark and gesture, but the fact that she did not jump at the chance to go made Soujiro sad.
それなら今度行けばいいじゃないか。
That's all it takes, baby. That's all it takes.
ありがとう。
Oh,
けどそれは無理な話。
Never mind. Abort mission.
あんたのことだから気づいていないと思うけど、あれ潰れてるのよ。廃園になってからもう2年以上は経つんじゃない？
なんと。
It was no wonder there were no customers all the time he was there. Exasperated as she was at Soujiro, the student council president seems to be enjoying herself. At this point, she would be yelling things at Soujiro like, I can't believe you didn't know that. But this evening, this one and only evening, she found it charming. They parted ways, and Soujiro returned home to his apartment, immersed himself in his studies, and before he knew it, it was time to go to work. The major cultural difference, though certainly not the only point of difference, between city and country was the use of time. It did not matter what part of the city he was in, time flowed far too quickly here. Failing to squeeze even a drop of knowledge from his textbooks, he put them away for the day before heading into town. This is part 1.5 still, right? This is... okay, that's a pretty long one. The night grew deeper as the day turned into tomorrow. Soujiro reversed his collar to protect his neck from the bitter cold and began to make his way back home. Not a soul to be seen, no dogs scrounging for food, no late-night shoppers. Why would there be? The solitary convenience store in the area closed at 11 o'clock. He mustered what little energy he had to take in an especially deep breath. Man-made landmarks lined the deserted streets. Garish blue fluorescent light, brighter than the stars above, illuminated the darkness. An unconscious sense of anxiety stirred within him.
情けない。夜が怖いのは当たり前じゃないか。
True. A chill crept up his spine as he attempted to mask his weakness with words. Stay out of the dark. Stay away from deserted places. Whether it was for some deeper reason or perhaps the fact that he looked so helpless. Everybody he had met in his life seemed to warn him with those words. Interesting.
そうは言ってもしょうがないし、大体。
What did that even mean, stay out of the dark? Nowhere in the city was without light. Everywhere, from the bustling train station to the remote residential areas, was illuminated by artificial light. Not least the main roads. Scary was scary, but this kind of fear was of a different sort than what he'd felt in the mountains. The most likely source of his fear was the fact that this place was governed by starkly different rules. The way in which the city meted out justice was terribly imbalanced. And to the provincial Soujiro, his lack of familiarity with the laws of the land terrified him far more than the dark. In the mountains, retribution came swiftly to those who broke the rules. Take a game trail, for example. Those who unwittingly trespassed on the animal kingdom's domain would, as a matter of course, be savaged by the native wildlife. Accordingly, in Soujiro's mind, an offender paid the price for one's mistakes immediately. It was not a matter of who punished whom, it was simply that the one who broke the rules would meet instant, tangible retribution. He felt that, in this regard, the laws of the city were far too ambiguous. He could meet their demise without... one could meet their demise without ever knowing whether one was in the right or wrong.
けど、基本的には変わらないんだよな、多分。
To put it simply, retribution was delayed. To take the analogy a step further, back home in his village, no one individual had been given the responsibility of maintaining order. In the city, however, someone was put in charge of punishing lawbreakers on behalf of the kind-hearted citizens who lived there. While crime and punishment in the mountains were synonymous, in the city the two were separated, and an unrelated person brought judgment after the crime had been committed. Entering places that must not be entered, seeing things that must not be seen, breaking a law that had consequences. Breaking a law had consequences. Someone would come to exact judgment for the law that was broken, or justice. The result of all this was that the safest way to survive the city was not to stick your nose in the affairs of others. When the people who cared about Soujiro told them to stay away, they probably meant if you don't, nobody will be able to help you.
といけない。また近道しそうになった。
No matter how much of a nuisance these obstacles were, one could not just climb over a neighbor's fence. even when one's apartment was just the other side. If people inside happened to be awake and call the police, nobody would lift a hand to help them. With his misguided view of the city, Soujiro once again ended his day in peace. Unable to fall asleep right away, he gazed out his window upon the night sky from the floor of his apartment. The cityscape had caused him to tremble in fear when he first moved here. The convenience of solving almost every problem with the flip of a switch. The novelty of living a wall away from a complete stranger. It all disappeared into the night sky when he looked up. Unconsciously, he recalled his own words. What dim stars. What a cramped sky. Here, there were no starry nights. Could he even survive here? The same misgivings since his first night continued to haunt him. His eyelids fell shut. Although he was fraught with worry, Soujiro's body felt the fatigue from his work and studies, and thus, he fell asleep. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Whoa. That's gonna be it for today. So, chapter 1 and chapter 1.5 took us just under 4 hours. Wow. That was really good. I'm in. I'm locked in. I'm locked in. This was really good. This was really good. I really like the writing in this. It's very a lot of the language is very flowery and stuff, which I really like. A lot of the way that they tell the story is kind of like done in a pretty poetic way, which is fun. Yeah, it's really fun so far. I was wondering after chapter 1, I was wondering what the story is gonna be, because it didn't really set up much of a story. It gave us some crumbs, right? And it obviously set up Soujiro coming to the town. It set up kind of like Aoko and stuff, and Alice living together. But apart from that, it didn't really show. It showed like crumbs of like some kind of like magecraft magic happening and stuff. But we haven't seen much. But I think 1.5 shows a lot more and gives a lot more to that. Obviously still doesn't explain anything, because that's gonna come later, but it gives us a lot more fun tidbits around that, which is gonna be fun. So but I really like how it's taking its time with everything, right? I really like that. It's really taking its time to like let you sink your teeth into the characters and stuff. I think that's awesome. That's really good. And it's done in a way that's not boring at all. So I love that. It's almost the same Nasu who wrote Garden of Sinners. Yeah. The dialogue feels, and just the way that it's written feels very similar to Garden of Sinners, definitely. Out of all of Nasu works that I've seen, it's definitely most similar to that when it comes to like the poetic nature of how everything is written, you know? Because Garden of Sinners has that vibe to it that like is very, I don't know, very unique. And I think this has a similar vibe to it as well, which I really like. So I'm excited to see where the story goes, right? I'm really excited for when we start to get actual like lore and like magecraft and like all of those things happening in witches. I think that's gonna be really fun. And also I'm sure that a lot of the interactions between the characters, I don't know what kind of visual novel this is gonna end up being when it comes to like the relationships and stuff, and I don't want to know beforehand, but I'm sure it's gonna be interesting to see anyway. You follow mostly will cut this? Yeah, I know. They'll cut some stuff. And that's fine, right? You need to cut some stuff when you're making an anime. You can't be expected to put every single thing that's in the game into an adaptation, right? It is an adaptation. You need to work to the strengths of an anime as opposed to the strengths of a visual novel. So I'm sure they're gonna make it work. You know, I have faith that it's gonna be good. They're gonna have to change quite a few things though, so it's gonna be cool. More in the action part. I think they're gonna focus more on conveying a lot of things with like facial expressions and stuff, which I think would be a good idea, because I think they can convey a lot with like they need some really cool direction for this, but if they manage to get the direction right, I think they can convey a lot of what this, at least this chapter 1 was trying to convey purely by visual direction without needing to explain it. So I think they can do it, but it's gonna be a big challenge for them. So I'm excited to see how they portray it, because even this has a very unique artistic direction for it. Even the visual novel, like a lot of the scenes are really well done. Like the composition of a lot of the scenes is really interesting, with like the black and white scenes and stuff. It's really cool. I really like it, and I think they need to get really creative with the direction of the movie to make it, you know, all come together. Kiwani, yeah. I was also thinking something like Shaft would be cool, you know? I think a Shaft Mahoyo would be awesome. Well, actually, I was thinking more so Shaft for something like LB6 or something would be awesome as well. Because I think if there's one studio that's like known for like really good visual storytelling, I think Shaft is awesome with that. It feels very dynamic. Wish FGO was like this. Well, yeah, but FGO is a live service game, right? This definitely feels very dynamic though. It's really good so far, so I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm locked in. Next stream is gonna be Friday. Tomorrow is Thursday, so as per tradition, no stream on Thursday. But we are streaming on Friday. Probably a little bit earlier than today, but still gonna be a bit of a late stream, because yeah, it's Friday. And then we also should be live on Sunday as well if everything goes according to plan. I have no plans for anything else on Sunday right now, but I'll let you know in the Friday stream as always. So yeah, you can finish the game tomorrow, surely, Robert, surely. Yeah, anyways guys, this was a lot of fun, but we'll see you guys for chapter 2 on Friday. So, see you guys then.